Alrighty, is this microphone working? Oh, there it is. Good morning, TRW. Let's do a quick roll call before we get started.
Senator Guru,
Here.
Senator Landon,
Here.
Senator Salazar,
Here.
Senator Schuler, Representative Banks,
Here.
Representative Haroldson,
Here.
Representative Jennings,
Here.
Representative Knapp,
Here.
Representative Newsom,
Here.
Representative Sweeney, Representative Williams,
Here.
Representative Winter,
Here.
Co-Chairman Ellis,
Present.
Co-Chairman Flitner.
Present. Alrighty, committee members, the first thing on our agenda is the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. We're going to get a general agency update, and with us we have Darren Westby. Morning, Director.
Good morning. Thank you, committee, Madam Chairman. My name is Darren Westby. I'm the Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources. I appreciate the brief opportunity just to get you up to speed on where we're at as an agency. And then we'll roll into the next items on the agenda. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce to my right, your left is Nick Nalen. He's the Deputy Director on the park side of the house. I have another Deputy Director probably sitting closer in the back, the church row. Deputy Director Dave Gwynn, you probably saw him mostly yesterday. I have two district managers, Brooks Jordan, who was on the tour yesterday with you all, and Steve Horn, who joined us yesterday afternoon's conversation. I also have Kevin Skates, who's the local superintendent for Hot Springs State Park, and Assistant Superintendent John Fish back there as well. And then Office of Outdoor Recreation, the manager for the Office of Outdoor Recreation, Patrick Harrington, is here today. We had to split up and double duty a little bit yesterday. So I had the State Trails Manager, Forrest Kaminga, and Office Outdoor Recreation Manager Patrick Harrington over at the Office of Tourism Board meeting to give them an update while we double dutied here with you all, giving you all updates on the trail side of the house. So it was a great day to disseminate information from our agency yesterday. So really appreciate that opportunity on the trail side and outdoor rec. I thought it was great conversation. I think a lot of ideas were brought up, and I think we have an opportunity going into the future to really think big, develop a plan, put that plan together on what it's going to take to get there, and then formulate it back to the governor's office and through you. And hopefully we'll see where we can take the outdoor recreation for the state of Wyoming. So I'm really excited to see that happen. One of my commissioners was thinking about being here, Barbara Ann Green. She's up in the northwest part of the state, well, Basin area, I guess. I think of that as northwest, but it's kind of more northern side of the state. But she was supposed to be here today, but I haven't seen her to pop in. But hopefully later this morning she might step in. But really excited to have commissioners excited to be a part of this process, and she was hoping to be here and introduce herself to you as well. Just quickly on an update perspective on the state park side, visitation, as I think everybody can attest across the country, we're seeing less numbers than what we did in 2020. So in 2019, which was a record year for state parks, we were at 4.4 million visitors. 2020, we bumped up to 5.8 million visitors. 2021, we dropped down to 5.7, not a significant decrease, but still pretty record numbers for us. 2022, right now, we're on projection to be about what, 5.3 million. So still, we're seeing numbers come down off that COVID, but still significantly up from where we were a record year in 2019. So the staff are feeling a little bit of a break this year, but still, if you look back on 2019, it's significantly more than what we were seeing. Unfortunately, with that, you couple that with a little bit of, as everybody else is seeing, hiring seasonals, hiring temporary employees is not the easiest thing to do right now. So a lot of the staff are doing that increase, or seeing that increased visitation with similar staffing that they had probably 10 years ago, just in being able to hire. So trials and tribulations, but I'm very proud to be serving with such a passionate team that do whatever they can to put forward the best face they can for our visitors, for the state of Wyoming brand management. This is what we do. This is why we do it. This is why what we want to do for the people that live here as well as that visit. So very proud to be a part of that team. I know we talked a little bit about outdoor recreation. We talked a little bit about ARPA funding yesterday. We did get 12 million in ARPA direct funding, and we got very fortunate to get 2 million from the Office of Tourism Board to help spend on that outdoor recreation product, try to develop that product. I think it was talked to Representative Banks or maybe Sweeney and Harrelson, both or all three of you talked about how do we develop more outdoor recreation product. We talked a lot about consolidating and dispersing and educating. Well, the more product that we have the ability to really refine where people can go. So we're not overcrowding one area. We're not utilizing other areas, and being able to utilize the outdoor recreation collaboratives that the Outdoor Rec office are going around the rest of the state and developing grassroots, community-driven ideas that are coming up through this ARPA direct and Office of Tourism product granting arm. I'm very not surprised, but very happy to see our office outdoor recreation manager, Patrick Harrington, just gave me some numbers this morning that just in applications that came in, we were, as of yesterday, close of business, there was 83 applications that came in, over $37.5 million. And so we got $14 million with the Office of Tourism to try to whittle that down to. If you add in any of the projects that the state parks are going to bring to the table, we're probably sitting above 100 projects and about $50 million worth of requests. So they got their work cut out for them to try to pare down, prioritize, see where we can get the quickest return on investment, the biggest matching dollars. It's very exciting to see that there's so much interest in developing these new outdoor recreation products, and I can't wait to see where they go with it. I think it's really exciting. We are talking about the future, talking about one-time influx of monies. How do we spend it wisely? I think we're very bullish in the fact that I think outdoor recreation, trying to control and direct where we're putting these ARPA funds, is very significant in how we can. Several words were said yesterday about directing and ensuring that we are driving where we want these visitors to go, how we want them to recreate. And so we are putting together another ARPA request to try to get another on that second tranche to try to bolster this $12 million, 14 with Office of Tourism dollars to, well, as you can see, we're already upside down more than twice in our request. And that's just the first round. These guys are going to keep going out and asking the collaboratives and the communities, what are the projects? So we're really excited, and I think hopefully we'll be successful with the governor in getting those requests pushed forward to you on the second tranche of the ARPA dollars. So don't be surprised if you see that coming.
And Director, thank you so much for bringing your team and introducing everyone. I know we had a good time yesterday morning looking at the facilities. Thank you for answering all our questions. I also want to acknowledge we have another person who is running for the legislature, Martha Lawley, for House District 27 in Worland. Thank you for being part of our meeting today, and good luck to you going into the general election. Committee, is anyone, maybe we'll take a quick break. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Co-Chair Flitner?
Director Wesley, thank you. I appreciate it. And when you talk about the one-time monies to these communities, when you guys distribute those grants, are they required to have a back-end O&M plan as well so that they can maintain those trails that they develop?
Director?
Madam Chairman, Madam Co-Chair, I don't believe that we are requiring that they have a back-end management agreement to ensure that the management is going to happen. We're trying to ensure that there is always a backing. I think Senator Drew had that question yesterday about if we're granting to governmental, NGO, non-governmental entity, that there is long-term responsibility for that product. And so trying to bring in the counties and support that they understand that if for some reason the NGO isn't going to maintain it going into the future, somebody is, just so we have that longevity of that piece. Hopeful with that support of the county, they understand that it's going into the future. I know a lot of the grants that we already offer with the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the Rec Trails Program, there's a perpetuity clause in there that they know when they sign and get the grant that they're on the hook to maintain for as long as the life of the product. So, but it's a great question, and it's something that I know the team is concerned about, and hopefully in their prioritization, they look at, you know, what is the long-term viability of the product.
Okay, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess before I leave off parks, is there any other question? I'm going to shift over to the cultural resource side. Very good. Well, thank you. I'll continue then. Similar with the parks, the State Museum and the State Archives is seeing that same 10-15% decrease in visitation through the doors. However, the State Museum prior to COVID really ramped up their online education, their virtual tours of the museum and of their collections that they have, which is was really easy spin-off when COVID happened. I mean, we're still getting citizens and students throughout the state of Wyoming educated on our museum and on our Wyoming history, but globally, we have a couple people that are in there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning giving a class tour of the Wyoming State Museum across the globe. And it's really exciting to see their passion, talking to a bunch of students that might be 4 o'clock their time, but at 4 o'clock our time in the morning, and just seeing their excitement and the engagement and the participation is just through the roof on that online. And it's granting more people the ability to have access to what we have there at the State Museum. State Archives, same thing. I get constant kudos emails from constituents trying to research their genealogy or trying to research birth certificates to try to ensure that, you know, what is their history of their family. It's pretty impressive what the team does there, and the pride and the passion that they have to ensure that anybody that walks through the door is going to have very good contact and the ability to get what they need out of the State Archives. And it's very, again, proud to work with such amazing people. The state archaeologists, they're out right now on a couple digs, and they bring volunteers. Their outreach has really been ramping up in an effort to not only showcase what the importance of archaeology is for the state of Wyoming and preserving the cultural heritage of what they're unearthing, but we did a little survey just internally, and my employees is like, all right, if you were able to do something for 4 hours of whatever we have within our agency, and I would be able to grant you that 4 hours to go do that, what would you like to do? Like 75% of my employees said, I want to go out on an archaeological dig. And it blew my mind, because that's not something that I would probably put down as my top priority, but the rest of the agency, it was, yeah, we want to go to a dig. So luckily we had a couple digs close to Cheyenne. So there was a lot of employees that went over for a day or two and split up their time and was able to help him dig on that site just outside of Laramie, which was really nice. It got them an opportunity to see what the state archaeologist does, get them a little greater appreciation for why it's important to have archaeology. And so it was really exciting. They are doing the archaeological fair coming up on September 10th. It's over at the Territorial Prison in Laramie. So if you're in the area on September 10th, starts about 11 o'clock. So new contacts, I'm still trying to read my own handwriting here. I apologize. So yeah, they would love to see if you're in the area. The Wyoming Arts Council and the Culture Trust Fund went to online applications this year, and so that's going really well. I think we've seen an uptick in applications coming in because of it. And they're full steam ahead on ensuring the arts communities and the artists are getting the grants that they're needing to keep going in during these times. SHPO, just during the state fair, we had the Centennial Farm and Ranch. The State Historic Preservation Office, in conjunction with a lot of partners, put that on every year during the state fair, and it was a great ceremony. There was, I think, 15 families that were honored. Unfortunately, 8 of them, I believe, were from Sublette County, and they were right in the middle of haying season. And so 7 of the families could not attend. And so we just happen to be having our State Parks and Cultural Resource Commission meeting in Pinedale here in another week and a half or so. And so we're going to take all those plaques and do another ceremony out there for the 7 that couldn't show up. It just happened to work out really well. And I think Representative Summers is going to host us out at their ranch, and it'll be a great celebration for those 7 families that didn't get to have their time there at the state fair. So we're really excited about that. We got plein air in the park happening in Kurt Gowdy State Park on the 16th through the 18th. And so if you're in the southeast part of the state and interested in seeing art be developed in a state park setting, it's really cool to watch some really interesting people do some really cool work. So from an update, that's about all I have for the agency, other than I'd like to keep you informed as to some of the other bills that we've been asked to present at in other committees. If you'd like, I can run through those other than the 4 that we have going on in this committee.
Committee members, any questions at this point? Okay, let's talk about those other bills.
Great. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Just last week, Transportation Committee was had, and Deputy Director Dave Glenn represented the agency there. There was three bills that were of interest to us. ORV, outdoor recreation vehicle safety and insurance. So there was a draft bill that was discussed and slightly modified, but it passed. So it'll be going forward to ensure that the ORVs have the appropriate, if they're going to drive on a enrolled street or a road that is within a city or county, that it has to have certain safety equipment as well as insurance certification. That's rolling forward. There was the bill on where an ORV can be operated in a right of way, or those specifics that we've been working with in the southwest part of the state. Thank you again for all your guys' help on that. That's getting pushed to the next meeting. There's a little bit more research that want to be done on that. And then there's benefits to spouses of law enforcement members. Not directly, we did not directly testify on that because it's being pushed forward to the next meeting as well. But we have 5 full-time law enforcement within state parks. We hire about 50 to 60 seasonal law enforcement, but those 5 law enforcement individuals, and I'll talk a little bit about the next bill that's coming up in judiciary, to bring those 5 law enforcement, full-time law enforcement personnel into the law enforcement retirement plan, which when I found out that wasn't the case, it kind of blew my mind. The amount of law enforcement and the type of law enforcement these people do it's frightening to see and hear that they're not in the law enforcement retirement plan. So we brought that forward to judiciary, and that's coming up September 12th up in Casper. So hopefully we'll get them in the law enforcement retirement program, and then that'll trigger the spouse's benefits. And God, hopefully it never happens. It's one of those bills that you hope we enact, but never gets utilized. And if they get killed in the line of duty, that their family gets to receive those benefits. So very good bills.
And thank you to Senator Landon. We had conversations before the session ended about interim and what appropriate committees. So I just want to thank Senator for taking that on and seeing it through and having those conversations. You want to add anything, Senator Landon?
Chairman, I appreciate the director reminding that bill will be coming up through, and hope you can support it. I think it's much needed. kind of like the director, I didn't realize that we had those kind of deficiencies until we got to looking at it. And that of course affects our game wardens as well. So, obviously, if we would ever lose one of our officers in line of duty, we want their families to be taken care of. So it's a good bill.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Please continue.
Thank you. First, September 1st, we'll be in Riverton at tomorrow. How quickly that came. Try building the brewery, trying to be open in the fall. It's over. Anyway, Ag Committee's up September 1st, tomorrow in Riverton, and we'll be there to testify. There's a bill, recreation on state lands, and so we're there to support the state lands and however we can support them in that effort to ensure that their mission is true, but we're trying to access as much opportunity for outdoor recreation and that we can in a very safe and safe way to do so. And lastly, just giving you kind of things that we're batting around as an agency that we're going to bring forward to the governor to hopefully be put in the supplemental budget request. I already talked a little bit about the ARPA second tranche, but just seeing, and I had the opportunity to been Representative Williams' ear last night, but just seeing what is happening with the infrastructure dollars and the ARPA dollars and what that is doing to the economy and the construction fields. We're having a hard time. We had a hard time before all this influx of money came in and the inflation came up, just to get anybody to go to a state park. We're not in downtown Cheyenne. We're normally outside a normal city that has a lot of those contractors. So to get people to go to Seminole, which is 40 miles outside of Sinclair, which isn't a huge construction metropolis, is almost next to impossible. And if we are going to get those people to show up, they're going to make it well worth their while to do so, which I'm perfectly fine as business people to make the money that they need to make. But trying to be fiduciarily responsible to the funds that we receive from you all, we've been batting around the idea of expanding our central construction crew that we have right now. It's a crew out of Shoshone, centrally located. There's 3 people. They go around and do the work that I can't get other people to do. And whether it's historic restoration, they're placing concrete sidewalk right now in Casper. They couldn't get anybody to work up there for the reasonable price. So we're looking to expand that central construction crew to go out and do the work that we need done to continue to move state parks forward and historic sites forward without being hamstrung with the economy, the inflation, the ability of contractors, availability of contractors. And so I'm not sure where it'll end up with our discussions with the governor, but don't be surprised if it gets passed out of the governor's budget into your guys' hands to you understand the why, hopefully a little bit more. And I just, the momentum that we have right now with state parks and outdoor recreation, I don't want to see it fall backwards because we can't find contractors to keep giving the people what they want. If we want to talk about directing people, well, if we have good facilities in state parks, they're well maintained, they're well contained. We can manage them better. They're not going elsewhere and destroying something else. So that's a little mindset there as well. So did I miss anything? Well, Madam Chairman and committee, that's kind of our update. Very excited. I have an amazing agency and I have probably the coolest job on the planet. I get the ability to sell the best that the state of Wyoming has to offer. Next to Diane, I probably have the best job on the planet. And speaking of Director Schober and the Office of Tourism and the board, I want to thank them for all their support with the lodging tax to see the need, the perpetual need, utilizing those funds to help develop and grow the outdoor rec product or the tourism product in the state of Wyoming is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we have in product that Diane's group gets to market, the more people that come and recreate and perform their tourism duty of spending their money here, self-perpetuates that fund. And so it was just a genius move on the board's, the thought on seeing what we can do with those funds. And I appreciate your guys' approval on granting that $2 million worth of product investment. And we're going to try to do the best we can to get it spent wisely and accordingly. So thank you.
Questions for the director? Senator Landon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director Westby, thank you for, by the way, I do think that there's going to be even higher pressures on our contractors over these next 5 years as we roll out that infrastructure package. Our folks are going to be busy in that industry. So I appreciate those thoughts. My question to you is if you have visited any within the agency about the potential of the surplus that the state of Wyoming might be looking at. It seems to me that would be a good time for legislators to consider investing in some of these funds, like the Cultural Trust Fund. That is money that never goes away, and all we do is use the dividends and interest off of that to make our state better. So I wonder if, depending upon what kind of forecast we get, do you have a plan B that you might be going to visit with the governor about, and would it include something like that?
Director Westby?
Madam Chairman, Senator, thank you for that. I know there's probably 10 people online doing cartwheels right now, so I appreciate the question. The Cultural Trust Fund is one that their board is always trying to increase that corpus. I mean, the corpus of that fund, the interest off that, as you said, goes directly to the local communities and trying to improve their cultural world, where they live, their livability. And so, yes, absolutely. We're always, anytime we feel that it's appropriate, we're going to ask for a corpus increase. I've held them off several times during some lean years. They keep going, well, now's the time to grow. And I'm like, no, we can't do it. I could not stand in front of you all or the JAC or even the governor at that point, knowing the financial situation that we're in, and ask for a corpus increase. But knowing and hearing what I'm hearing now with the economy, it's probably a good opportunity to go see another increase. I want to appreciate the increase that we got last year, albeit not I think we wanted to be 20 million by 2020. We're not quite there yet, but every little bit is helping. And so I'd love to, I think their concept is 30 million by 2030. So that might be their next step, discussion with the governor's office. And I know that there's other conversations going on with the board and the governor's office as well. But thank you for that question.
Any other questions for the director? Alrighty, Director, do we want to move into the discussion of LSO 23 LSO 0013?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I will turn it over to Deputy Director Nealon to work these bills with you.
Committee members, this is a pretty straightforward bill or proposed change, so I don't think we need LSO to weigh in.
Madam Chairman, Nick Nealon, Deputy Director, State Parks. So a little bit of history to begin with, if I may. In 2015, the legislature passed a bill that allowed state parks to use up to 25% of our self-generated revenues for maintenance in parks. That was in response to budget reductions. A couple of years later, that percentage was increased to 30% in response to additional budget reductions. And then after the COVID budget reductions, the percentage was increased to 60%. And the word operational was added to the definition of what we could use it for. Previously, we could only use the funds for maintenance in parks, which included things like buying supplies, hiring maintenance personnel, things like that. Now we can use it to do things like hire additional law enforcement folks that Director Westby referenced, hire additional fee collectors, which has helped increase our revenue, hire interpretive staff, things like that.
Director Nayland, can you remind me the year that we went to the 60% plus maintenance and operational?
It was in 2021 that it was passed, effective for the 2022 and 23 fiscal years.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, so it bisects, it sunsets during the current, at the end of the current fiscal year in the middle of the biennium. So what this piece of legislation does is to remove or to adjust the sunset or remove the sunset completely, which is what we're hoping for, and leave the word operational in the bill so that we can continue to use it to hire, again, those folks like law enforcement, interpretive, and fee collectors. Our budget, our non-staff operational budget has seen a 69% reduction since 2015. And without these funds, we would have closed parks already by now.
Any other comments? Questions from the committee? I have one. You said that the way we structured this in 2019, it sunsets mid biennium. I'm guessing that's not a preference to do. It's a little goofy that we did that. So as we think about what number to insert there, does it make sense to have it be an even year, an odd year? Have you given that some thought?
Madam Chairman, if there is a sunset remaining in the bill, an even year would certainly be preferable. It's very hard to put together the budget when a considerable funding source potentially disappears in the middle of the biennium. As you're aware, the legislature through the JAC and your efforts already oversees our budget and already has authority to approve our expenditures. Having a sunset date in there seems a little bit redundant.
Senator Grew?
Thank you. Just want to make sure, Deputy Director, that I have this straight. General fund reduction 69% since when?
Since 2015, and that's in non-staff. That's just our operating expenses.
Yep, follow up.
And so you're funding through your fees collected. How much has your budget grown as far as that operational budget at the same time that the general fund has gone down 69%?
Deputy Director Nayland?
Madam Chairman, Senator Grew, I don't know exactly what that number is, but it has not outpaced considerably what that reduction was.
Last question.
Senator Grew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In relationship to, and if you can't answer this question, it's just maybe for next time as we get farther into this, but comparison with other states, what other states are doing around us in that same field, that'd be helpful, I think, for the committee to have that picture. to be able to
Deputy,
look at that.
Deputy
Chairman,
Director?
Senator Grew, that's certainly something we'd have to look into, and we could report back at your next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Haroldson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So real quick question, so we've got this 60% set aside to take care of personnel upkeep, basically just operations of, before that would have been capital construction, correct?
Deputy Director?
Madam Chairman and Representative Harrelson, that's true. However, the important thing I left out of the explanation earlier was that's an up to number. It was up to 25, up to 30, up to 60. And during the entire time we've had that language those funds at our discretion with legislative approval, we've never approached the maximum.
Madam Chair.
Follow up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Where are we at currently?
Right
Deputy
now,
Director?
for the current, Madam Chair, Senator Representative Harrelson, in the current budgeted biennium, we are approximately 33%.
Thank you very much, Director. Madam Chair, one more.
Follow up, Representative Haroldson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Deputy Director, where are we at in capital construction? And are we at a situation where we're going to be getting an ask for money for capital construction because we are robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Madam
Deputy
Chairman?
Director?
Representative Harrelson, no, we're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near that situation. As Director Westby spoke about earlier, we're having a difficult time getting projects out in the field sometimes because it's hard to find people to do the work and the costs are so exorbitant. We recently put out a restroom project for the territorial prison in Laramie. They came back at $850 a square foot. needless to say, we didn't proceed with something like that. And we want to be good stewards of the state money. So we're in a difficult position.
Thank you.
Further questions? Director Westby?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Representative. Just to add on to that, with our visitation increases that we've seen, we're also seeing a little bit more money, revenues coming in from the visitation. So it's not necessarily offsetting the percentage that is going to operations and maintenance. We still have the capital construction availability to do so, like Deputy Director said. So I think we're structurally, we've positioned ourselves in a business perspective that we seen what we needed, took advantage of the budget reduction, figured out the fees that we can keep operational and keep open to a level of brand management that is required of our visitors, and still maintaining the capital construction dollars and availability there to keep giving the public what they want through our visitor use surveys, through our everything that we do to ensure from a market research that when we're seeing people needing longer campsites, we're having the capital construction and the research that supports those capital construction requests.
Further questions? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess my biggest question would be, we're continually seeing an uptick in, other than maybe our COVID year and visitors. So is there a downside to just doing away with the sunset? I mean, can you tell me why it would be a bad thing to just get rid of the date and be done with it?
Director?
Madam Chairman and Senator, no, I think as Deputy Director Nayland said, we feel that we have to go in front of the Joint Appropriations Committee every year, having the 60% or that percentage in there and having operational costs in there in the definition of what we can spend. We have legislative oversight. We have to go forward with the budget. As Deputy Director also said, the up to language, we fought pretty hard to keep that up to. To go back to Representative Harrelson's comment of, are we robbing the capital construction? Well, we fought hard to keep that up to number in there because I didn't want to be forced to spend 60% of the capital construction funding on operation. I wanted to be, we wanted to be and have the opportunity to operate as strongly as a business as we can, put some onus back on our site personnel to say, all right, you get to eat a little bit more of what you kill now. So the more visitation you get, the more revenue you bring in, you get to help yourself. You're short staffed. Well, now you have the ability to have skin in the game. So that's a long answer to a short question. The answer is yes. I think eliminating the sunset is beneficial to both the agency and how we can operate on a long-term basis. It also eliminates us having to come back every 2 years and ask for a sunset increase, which we're fine either way. We have nothing to hide coming back to this body and talking about what we're doing with the operational costs or the percentage. That has no problem with us. It just, I don't want to spend time on it when it comes back and it's a perennial ask every time. For us, we want to just get out and do our business.
Two of my favorite phrases, eat what you kill and skin in the game. We're back. Legislature's back. Any other questions? All righty. All right, seeing none. Thank you. Let's see. Is there any public comments? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about this funding situation? Seeing none, I don't think there's anyone online, but just confirming. Nope, there's no one. All righty. Well, Director, maybe just have a seat there while we consider what we want to do with this particular piece of legislation. Committee, what you think? Bill's been moved and seconded by Flitner and Guru. Discussion on the bill?
Let's discuss the sunset.
Yeah, let's have some conversation about the sunset. Well, certainly for those members who have served on appropriations, if you have a particular thought, I think, if we were to extend the year, it would make sense to choose an odd number so that they're back on a normal biennium planning so that they're not having to address this mid-budget. Senator Landon?
Thank you. I won't take long. I agree with you on the point you just made. If we choose to keep a sunset in there. During my years in the Senate, we have had some of these come and go. And I hope I characterize this correctly. In my mind, we put a sunset date on there so we can take a look at the program and see how it's doing. And how many times we want to do that, we can certainly put another sunset, but there have been several of them that we have taken away once we're convinced that the operations are going well and that we're comfortable with where we have it set. So, Senator Drew might have some different thoughts on that, but that's why we've gotten rid of sunsets, is that it's working. And generally speaking, we eventually do get rid of them.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Drew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would agree with Senator Landon. You go back on the history of this, we've gone through this a couple of times. We've added, given them more authority, not less. And they're building a business model that is, I think, sustainable. And that was the point of my questions. And we will get to take a look at this. But how they're building within themselves through their fee structure, how it relates to the other states. Are we keeping in line with a business model that keeps us competitive and allows them to do the things they want to do as they transition away from just straight, direct funding from the general fund? And so I think it's actually a compelling picture. I think that personally, I'd like to see the sunset come off. And it also, one of the things that I've been kind of not griping, that's unfair, talking about with potential people in leadership, not that I'll ever be, but have this the home committee for this department, and to come to this department with their budget before it comes at the last meeting, before it comes to JAC, so you all can, we as a committee can look at it before it goes on, and just an overview, but just still drill down on some of these things. So I think it gives the committee a better picture, and then can actually help appropriations committee when they get it, and then when it gets to the floor, to build that that sense that we're all kind of in the know on this, and so then JAC isn't this omnipotent group that sits above everyone and thinking that it's not the way it is. If this committee gets that buy-in to it before it gets there. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for, is that we get to do, and we can start here by eliminating the sunset, or if you choose not to, that's fine too. But I think it's time. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. So I'm a big fan of sunsets, and for many of the reasons that the senator just said. Sunsets this is the home committee, and we do need to look at things, and we might be able to catch things and save a little time for JAC, not having to go through them. So I'd be opposed to removing the sunset. That having been said, then I think I also would, it seems like the 60% we might have set that a little high. I think I'd be inclined to make a motion to move that back to maybe 50. So that'd be my motion.
Okay, any other discussion, or did you want to make that as a motion? So you want to do 50% on, how about you walk us through your motion?
Make me find my place again.
Got to work.
So on page 2, line 16, just where it had gone to 60, just to remove that and put it back to 50%.
Okay, it's been moved. Well, let's take them piece by piece. It's been moved. Seconded. Any discussion on the proposed amendment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no.
No.
The amendments failed. We're back on the bill. Any other amendments? Senator Grew.
We're on page 2, line 15, middle of the line, starting with the word "for," delete. delete that sentence to the comma on only. So in other words, it would just say not more than 60% of the funds. Or, just, I don't know, we got the words with that.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
As far as, but the basic intent is to eliminate the sunset.
Okay, it's been moved by Gru, seconded by Landon for discussion on the amendment. Did anyone miss it or not catch it? Representative Newsom and then Representative Haroldson.
I think a cleaner way to do that would be to go up to line 10 and change that 30% to 60%. And then go to line 12 and after maintenance, put operational maintenance and operational costs associated and then delete line 15 from 4, delete the rest of that through 22. I think that's a cleaner way to get to what the senator would like to have happen.
So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. I didn't quite follow all of it. I was just kind of following along. Representative Newsom, would you repeat that and then be looking for our mover and our seconder to see if they agree that that's a friendly amendment?
So on line 10 of page 2, instead of 30% to have that be 60%. On line 12 to after maintenance, say, and operational costs. Associated with. Luke, is this making sense to you? Okay. And then deleting from the middle of line 15, starting with 4, deleting through line 22. Does that make sense to you?
I'm going to ask Director Westby, we're kind of doing this on the fly, but I'm wondering, since these are created in two separate places, in my thinking, there's got to be a distinction between the two. Do you have a thought on this proposed suggestion?
Madam Chairman, I think Representative Newsom's proposal is accurate. By removing the sunset, just the dates, as Senator Gru said, it's duplicative of what we can use the funds for. And so by doing what Representative Newsom suggested, gets rid of the duplicative, it's very clean. It puts it back in where it originally was.
Director, I think by doing that, though, we lose and operational costs.
No, I haven't.
Is that in there? Okay. Okay.
Madam Chairman, after line 12,
Gotcha.
Representative Newsom added and operational costs.
Perfect. Okay. Senator Gru, do you consider that a friendly amendment?
With one Madam Chair, just one caveat before I answer that question. I want to look back there at Luke and say, Luke is shaking his head.
Madam Chair, Senator Gru, I certainly think that would work. You just would be kind of, combining the language. I think it's fairly similar. So that would, I think that is meeting the goals of the committee. And I think it's up to you if you think that keeps in line with what you want.
Oh, that
But
makes sense.
yes, it's just combining the two sections instead of a split.
Right. So what I hear, Madam Chair, what I hear you
Senator
saying is
Gru.
by leaving it to the smarter legislators who know how to do this, actually it's better. Yeah, okay, let's do that. I want,
However you'd like to do it.
Senator Landon, is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
The coffee's kicking in. That makes
And
good
it's
sense,
on
Sandy.
off.
Good catch. So, all righty. So you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, say no. The amendment's passed. We are back on the bill. Any other changes? All righty, let's do a roll call.
Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Landon. Senator Salazar.
No.
Senator Schuler. Representative Banks,
Aye.
Representative Haroldson,
No.
Representative Jennings, Representative Knapp,
No.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Sweeney,
Aye.
Representative Williams,
Aye.
Representative Winter,
No.
Co-Chairman Flitner. Aye. Chairman Ellis.
Aye. Okay, we will see that one during the session. And then just for how my co-chair and I have handled it in the past, I know we've got some bill drafts that moving forward that will be introduced in the session. In the past, we've kind of waited into the end of our work to see how many bills we have to make sure we're kind of dividing them between the House and Senate equally. So I think we might do that again this year. It seemed to work out pretty good in the past. So stay tuned on whether or not that'll be a Senate file or a House bill. Okay. Committee, we're at 9:19. The next item on our agenda is the Sutton Archaeological Site. And we have State Parks here to talk about that legislation. Director Nayland.
Madam Chairman, today, I believe I'm joined online by Carly-Ann Carruthers, who's the head of our planning section in State Parks, and Spencer Pelton, who is the state archaeologist. This bill adds the Sutton Archaeological Site that we've spoken to you about before several times to the state park system. Our goal with this bill is to protect the site. We're not interested in seeing it developed or commercialized in any way. We want to do things like erecting fences, putting up signage, and putting up some cameras to protect the site. It's seen some evidence of looting over the years, and we'd just like to put a stop to that. This is as Dr. Gardner spoke to you at your last meeting, Dr. Dudley Gardner spoke to you. This is a potential World Heritage Site. It's that important. So that's what this bill does. It's very simple. It adds this site to our system.
Thank you. And I want to thank LSO. I think in other drafting, we really have some pretty unspecific language when it comes to identifying certain archaeological sites. Thanks to your department and to LSO for giving us some more specific parameters, just so that we know what we're talking about here. As I mentioned, I visited the site years ago and actually have a jar of the dirt, the ochre. I shared it with committee members so they could see what it feels like. But during the break, if anyone wants to come up, it's in this jar. And so when you're talking about looting, I guess I'm maybe one of those that grab some dirt. I'm really sorry. I'm going to take it right back right when we're done on my way home. So anyway, so we let's make sure our online presenters are ready. I don't know between Carly-Ann and our state archaeologist, Mr. Pelton, who would like to address this committee first.
Madam Chairman, I think they're just here in case there are any questions from the committee.
Okay, sounds good. Committee members, do you have any questions for State Parks? Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Not really a question, just a statement. I was a part of that site survey and I love what they're doing. They're not looking at making this the next site for everyone to go look at, because that's not what it needs to be, but they are sitting there saying, hey, let's kind of push pause on time and let this be there for the historical aspects. As if you walk into there with an untrained eye, it looks like a field with some rocks in it. But then after you start looking and looking hard, you're realizing there's way more than that there. And it's a cool aspect. And like they said, it's unlike anything we've found in North America, which is really cool. So and it's kind of down in a little bit of nowhere, Wyoming, which is fun. So I think protecting this is the wise choice. I think that it probably should have been done a long time ago, but obviously we weren't aware of that and weren't at a point we could do that. But now that has landed in our lap, and I think that's a great opportunity.
Thank you for those remarks. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Alrighty, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this topic? Seeing none, I just want to make sure if our online folks want to testify, to turn on your virtual hand, and we'll make sure we get you in. And if not, that's fine too. Okay. And Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So will this need to be fenced, or is it already fenced? Part of it looks like it's part of the mine site.
Madam Chairman.
Deputy Director Nayland.
Representative Sweeney, yes, that's part of our intention, is to erect some fencing, put up some cameras for security, and add signage to try to keep some of those folks away who have ill intent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, public comments closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? The bill's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Flitner, seconded by Haroldson. Discussion on the bill. Page 1, page 2. Any amendments? Question on the bill? Let's do a roll call vote.
Senator Giroux,
Aye.
Senator Landon,
Aye.
Senator Salazar,
Aye.
Senator Schuler, Representative Banks,
Aye.
Representative Haroldson,
Aye.
Representative Jennings,
Aye.
Representative Knapp,
Aye.
Representative Newsom,
Aye.
Representative Sweeney,
Aye.
Representative Williams. Representative Winter.
Aye.
Co-chairman Flitner.
Aye.
Chairman Ellis.
Aye. Alrighty, that bill will be introduced for our next upcoming session. Alrighty, committee members, we are ahead of schedule, which is great. It's 9:24. How about we take a 15-minute break and we will make sure that we've got people ready to testify since we're ahead of schedule. We'll keep plugging along, but we want to maybe give them a few minutes to make sure that they're ready to present. Director, thank you for bringing your team. Thanks for, again, hosting our tour yesterday and all the information you provided.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very good.
Alrighty, committee, thank you for coming back. That was a nice break. Next on our agenda, we are going to be having a conversation with our Office of Tourism. We have Diane Schober, who's the Executive Director of the Department of Tourism, and I believe she can introduce the team that she's brought with her today. Welcome, Director Schober.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Diane Schober. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Office of Tourism. And here with me to my left, to your right, is Michelle Howard. Michelle is our Senior Director of Brand Strategy. And to my right is James Schoon. James is our Director of Global Partnerships. Here in the audience, we also have Lisa Oswald, who recently joined our team as Director of Strategy and Business Operations. Charles Lammers, who's our Visual Assets Manager, and you'll be hearing more from Charles later on in the agenda when we discuss the film bill. And then Brittany Campbell, who is our Business Services and Operations Senior Coordinator. Also really pleased to introduce to you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee, members of the Wyoming Tourism Board. This is an industry appointed board by the governor, confirmed through the Senate, and through their leadership and expertise on the day-to-day boots on the ground, working in this tourism industry is really important to us as we execute strategy and continue to drive the tourism marketing and promotion plan for the state. Mike Keller is the chairman. Mike is an at-large member. He's the GM of Xanterra Parks and Resorts in Yellowstone National Park. Bud Betts is here. Bud is also an at-large member. I think most of you would know him from the Absaroka Ranch. Bud also did a stint in the legislature. So he is very familiar with the work that you're doing. Mark Tesoro is here. Mark represents District 4, which is Uinta, Lincoln, and Sweetwater County. And then I don't know if Hugh Blair from District 5 with Blair Hotels made it because we're a little bit early. And so he was driving down from Cody this morning. Ken Barkey, also an at-large member with the Prime Rib Restaurant in Gillette. If you've ever been to Gillette and you haven't been to this restaurant, please go. It's one of the best. So those are members of our board that are with us. And before we get started, if I may, I just quickly want to say thank you to Jackie Dorothy with the Hot Springs County Lodging Tax Board. I know Jackie's here. And Chris Brown with the Wyoming Hospitality and Travel Coalition. They were sponsors of last night's reception at the resort, and where you all came and had a chance to network with members of the local tourism community. So it's just another example of great partnerships that we get to enjoy through this industry. So thank you for allowing me for those introductions and that moment of thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like us to go ahead and proceed, Madam Chairman, with the first item on the agenda under this
Please.
section?
Please, thank you.
Yes, so the title of this section is Historical Funding and Expenditures. And the best way to demonstrate and share that information with you is to actually show you the work that we do. The work of the Wyoming Office of Tourism is different than a lot of other agencies. We're a non-regulatory agency, and we really are primarily a marketing organization for the state of Wyoming by growing the tourism economy, and thus the state benefiting from those economic impacts. And so we have a presentation. James and Michelle are going to be joining me in this presentation with you today. You also will have a link sent to you so that you can access this presentation and go back and look at it on your own. I know sometimes when we're looking at a screen, it's not always easy to see some of the numbers. You might want to watch some of the videos again. But with that, I'm going to get started. And I must do a shout out to Heather and Steve with PBS for helping us with some of the work that we're doing. Again, as I introduce myself, I'm Diane with the Wyoming Office of Tourism. A real pleasure to be here with you today. Let's see how I can advance this. Heather, do you know? Wait, I think I see it. No, we don't. Here we go. We're in. We're good. Thank you. Again, the reason why we're so grateful, it takes a village to run a PowerPoint presentation through Zoom. The Wyoming Office of Tourism, we're responsible for promoting our state, obviously as a travel destination for leisure travelers, but also by doing so through the inspirational messaging and ads that are delivered across the nation. We're also enhancing Wyoming's public image as a viable place to live and work. And so there's definitely crossover between vacation and other economic development factors that are really the halo effect of tourism and tourism marketing. Through the impact of travel, we're strengthening Wyoming's economic position and providing opportunities for the people in our local communities. This is really what this industry is about. It's about the communities that each one of you represent and where we live and work, and to also enhance the reasons why we also love to live and work in Wyoming. Visitors enjoy those same benefactors. I'll get this down. All right, let's go into the economy of travel. This will give you some historical perspectives. Each year, through economic analysis, there is a value that's done around the total impact of travel. This is not just the work that the Office of Tourism does. This is the work and the results of work of the Office of Tourism, of local lodging tax boards like the Hot Springs County Lodging Tax Board. There are lodging tax boards in all counties across Wyoming, and also the private sector businesses who invest in inviting visitors into their areas. And you can see from 2019 through 21, we won't have the 22, obviously the year's not over, but we'll have the 22 impacts early in the first quarter of 23. And we'll share those with you, hopefully before the session is even over when you're in session next spring. Visitor volume was at 9.2 million in 2019, dipped for obvious reasons in 2020, the year we like to forget. And then in 21, back up to 8.1 million, which was a year-over-year growth of 17%, but was still down slightly from 19, about 12%. And I will tell you that starting off this year, demand has been a little bit softer, even going into the summer. And looking at national information, data, and research, and there's a lot of reasons why that may be impacting that. Certainly the price of gas had an impact on people's willingness and ability to travel. We have usually been pretty recession-proof on that. And so, but that may have been a slight factor. But also just nationally over the last 2 years, Americans were told to go outside, be in wide open spaces, and they didn't have other choices for their travel decisions. They didn't have choices to travel to Europe or other places outside of the country. They couldn't go to cities, they couldn't go to concerts, they couldn't go to theater, indoor venues. And now all of those options are back open for travelers. And so I say that because, we just know that we can never take demand for granted. We will have a base level of travel, but to drive incremental travel and really benefit from the economy of the visitor industry, we have to be able to be very strategic in how we're promoting this industry and driving awareness for Wyoming and creating the desire to visit here. Travel generated spending is really the reason why there is a tourism economy and why there's an investment in it to have an umbrella campaign representing the state. Travel generated spending in 21 was $4 billion. That's with a B. That is money that was spent in the businesses across Wyoming while travelers were here and doing what they needed. That's in the cash registers of our local communities. From there, travel generated taxes. Now these are all taxes: motor fuels tax, sales and use tax, state sales tax, local tax, lodging tax, $243 million. Even in a year when visitation and volume was slightly down, that was up over 20% of 2019. Jobs. This is the largest private sector employer in the state of Wyoming, representing over 30,000 jobs. Still down slightly, but I think we've seen an uptick even in 22 in the number of employment. So hopefully that will continue to improve. And travel generated wages and salaries. There was an error here. This should be 1 billion, not 1 million. And so if we only made $1 million, that would be something that would be good. I made the change, but it must not have saved there. But just important that you know that this is a viable industry for Wyoming. Travel also builds healthy communities and support for local and state government. So on that $243 million that we talked about in taxes that were generated, local lodging tax, 11.3%, local sales tax back into city and county governments, 15.6% of that, state motor fuels tax, 20%, state lodging, 12.5%, state sales tax back to local, 12.3%, and then state sales tax, the 4% was 28.3%. So there's a distribution across a variety of communities as well as to the state, and also contributing back to what I like to call our visitor distribution system, roads and bridges and highways across Wyoming. We also measure the effectiveness of our ads. What does the campaign actually do? So we spend money on marketing campaigns. Michelle's going to go through those with you today. But we want to know, like, what are those? How well are those performing? And so we do independent analysis through every year to ensure that there is lift from the campaign and it's actually generating travel and incremental economic value. And that's really what we're after, right? There's a base level of travel and we want to grow that incremental level. You can see that the campaign investment is down from where we were in 2019, but in 22, we were able to get that back up again. We spent in 21, 3.75 million in paid media, paid buying, advertising, and having it placed strategically in markets and across the digital landscape. That campaign in and of itself influenced 626,000 trips. Trips usually average 2.5 to 3 people. We don't know what a half a person is, but you know, in the rules of statistics, we let that go. And then they're spending 720 million, and state influence sales tax was 28.8. So still way in recovery mode. When you're looking at these 21 numbers, you're going to see 22 have a much larger impact, but these are what they are. And so we wanted to share those with you. We'll be back at 2019 or higher levels. We anticipate when we're able to share these with you at the beginning of the year and going into 23. You also had asked about changes in our budget. And so it takes resources to execute against a plan and to do this. And there's been a long time effort to have a dedicated funding source that would be non-general funds, that the state wouldn't have to take general funds and put into the marketing of tourism, but could take those general funds and reappropriate those into other areas. And so there were discussions about how to use a tax across the hospitality, the leisure and hospitality industry. As a body, you voted in the 20 budget session, right before we even knew really anything about COVID, to implement a statewide lodging tax. It would be a 3%, one portion of that bill was a 3% statewide lodging tax, of which 80% would go to the operations for tourism and tourism promotion. The other 20% would go into a reserve, a tourism reserve fund. And I'll go into this a little bit more in detail when we get to the end of the presentation, but I wanted to give you an idea of where we have been in general fund appropriations over several bienniums and where we landed after the session concluded, this last session for this biennium. So the 26.5 million was then reverted back to the general fund. So that was no longer necessary for the use of the Wyoming Office of Tourism. And from the tax collections, we were provided spending authority of 38 million. These are biennium numbers. And so that, and you can see the level of increase. So it represents a 43% increase over just this last biennium. What we're going to do is we're going to share with you what we've been doing because we haven't had an opportunity to spend these funds in marketing and destination development, but then we're going to tell you where we plan to go with this increase and what the impacts would be. And so with that, I actually just want to quickly go through a couple of things on where we're, how we sit through our strategic lanes, and then Michelle and James are going to take you through the strategic initiatives. Do you want me to stop for questions?
Yeah, Director Schober, if we could, Representative Newsom.
And I don't know if you'll go over this later in your presentation, but do you know what our surrounding states spend on an annual basis? And have we, it's been the argument that we were well behind their spends for years. And I'm wondering if you have that information at all.
Director Schober.
Madam Chairman and Representative Newsom, I don't have it in today's presentation, but we do have it. It's the U.S. Travel Association does a survey of all state tourism offices every year. They pull out the nuances, like some tourism offices run welcome centers, some don't. Some tourism offices have a film program within their operations, some don't. And so what they do is they break down your budget so that you're comparing apples to apples. Wyoming traditionally has ranked in the bottom half of all states. We fell behind Montana, Utah, Colorado, South Dakota, on par almost with Nebraska. With this increase, we're going to be still behind Utah and Colorado, but we'll be in a much greater competitive position with Montana. And the reason why that's important is when you're placing messaging and ads, let's see if you were running something and maybe there was a story about fly fishing. And if it were coming from Montana, a consumer would click on that link and learn about fly fishing, but it would all be based around Montana. And they would then go to their trip planning tools through Montana, all of their websites and other channels, social channels. And that consumer and potential traveler would then plan their trip through Montana. Because it's a numbers game in how many times you can be there and the frequency before consumers. This is very important in having Wyoming's message there in the same competitive way that our surrounding states are. Now, certainly we benefit from travel in these other states, but to really drive business for Wyoming communities, even if someone's planning a trip to Yellowstone, we want them to be driving through Wyoming to and from Wyoming, not to and from through Montana or Idaho. It's so important. And that's the reason why having a competitive source of funding to be able to be competitive against those other surrounding states was really the genesis of this request. There were two things. There were so many conversations from you and your peers to have the Office of Tourism removed from the general fund, and also to be able to put Wyoming in a much more competitive position against other tourism efforts.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions while we have this break? Okay, continue.
We obviously, as other state agencies do, provide a strategic plan every year with our biennium budget. But I just want to highlight to you, every decision that we make and what we're doing is grounded in these 4 strategic areas of focus: to grow the statewide impact from Wyoming's visitor economy, and obviously increase travel generated spending. We want to, this year, we'll be looking at some very targeted overnights in some underserved areas of the state to see how well we're influencing moving people around the state. Reestablishing our international marketing endeavors. Those have essentially been down to a base level over the last 2 years. Distribute visitation to lesser known locales. I'm going to share with you some of our data and insights on how we're tracking folks through mobile geolocation, and increase positive stakeholder and resident sentiment, helping people understand why tourism is valuable to each and every community in Wyoming. We'll be elevating our partners. And when we say partners, we mean local lodging tax boards, but also any organization that's involved in the tourism industry. This is really the area where James and his team carry out these strategic initiatives, but empower local communities to leverage the visitor economy, to seek out like-minded brand partners to extend marketing and the effectiveness of that, hitching our wagon basically to others who can help carry this message where we don't have to do the heavy lifting, and to increase local capacity to create revenue generating demand. That's really what these local communities are after, is how can they benefit from the revenue of the visitor economy. And that I know is important to your constituents and those that you serve. To champion the destination and the brand, to increase brand awareness. And when we say brand, the brand is Wyoming. That is the brand. So we're trying to increase that brand awareness for not only the value of tourism, but for all of the other economic benefits that we mentioned earlier. To increase those intent to travel metrics. We know that there's a pathway that a consumer takes. And once they go to a certain level and they hit, I've taken this action, I've seen the ad, now I've engaged with an ad, now I've gone to seek out more information. We know that every one of those steps increases the likelihood of that consumer to actually travel to Wyoming. They leave the planning phase and actually make the commitment to book a trip. And that's what we're after, is to increase those as we watch those metrics, to make sure that we're increasing those intent to travel, to increase our share of voice. And that really is to have others, whether it's user generated content or through marketing and PR efforts, but to help people be our ambassadors and talk about Wyoming as a great place to live and work, but also a great place to be responsible. And if you love these places, join us in being responsible travelers and be an advocate for this beautiful land and these pristine and beautiful wild places. And that then is the last bullet under this lane, is to increase responsible visitation through education and messaging. So it's a very high priority for us as well. When we also take our own internal operations very seriously and how well we're performing and meeting benchmarks. Our top goal under here is to recruit and retain top tier talent. Happy to say that I believe that we have achieved that and continue to achieve it. as evidenced by those you'll be hearing from along with me today, to align data and insights to track and inform our decisions. It's not just what are we going to do? Let's have a shotgun approach. Let's have a very, very targeted and strategic approach to how we expend these public funds and to continually align and optimize our departments. So we have a small but a mighty team. We're small by state agency standards. There are 24 of us. And yet, we're still really, we have to make shifts sometimes as our strategy changes, our structure follows that strategy. And so we want to have that ability to remain nimble and set that up within our existing human resource capacity that we can still meet those goals and that standard. So that in a nutshell is the history, a little bit of the economy of travel, our strategic endeavors. And now the fun part is you're going to get to see some of the work.
Diane, can I interrupt for one moment?
Sure.
So one of the things you said was responsible visitation. And one thing that drives me crazy is reading these articles about people touching the wildlife and doing really goofy things in Yellowstone. I'm just kind of curious what your conversations your office has had to try and tell folks that they shouldn't be touching buffalo, and I don't know. Just curious.
Madam Chairman and members of the committee, of course, it just never ceases to amaze us, like all of you. Michelle will share with you, I don't know which one it's, I think it's in Michelle's, about our Buy Responsibly campaign, which actually is a conglomeration of work that we've done with other state agencies and federal agencies to incorporate a common messaging around this. We actually have put marketing dollars behind it. The work will never be done. I just don't know. So if anyone has any fabulous ideas on how to stop the, what did they say, the Darwin tourism videos that come up every year, we certainly would be happy to do it. But we're trying. We're working on our efforts to make sure that the common messaging is that these are wild animals. They're in wild places, and there's a whole section on Why Responsibly around wildlife.
Thank you.
And with that, Madam Chairman and members of the committee, I'm going to turn this section of the presentation over to Michelle Howard, and I will still be driving the PowerPoint presentation. So if things get a little clunky, it's not Michelle's fault. It is mine. With that, Michelle Howard.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Michelle Howard, Senior Director of Brand Strategy. Been with the Office of Tourism now. I'm entering my 26th year of employment with the agency. Yes, I started when I was 10. No, but it's been such a pleasure to work for Diane, and as she said, with this team, it's the marketing side of things has evolved quite a lot since I first started. When we were doing a travel guide, I was there when we first put together the first Office of Tourism website, which was basically at that time the travel guide, just in an online version. It wasn't very interactive, and it's been a challenge to keep up with everything, all of the different digital media tactics. I mean, there's been so many things that have, we've been able to integrate this campaign into so many different channels. And so just going to walk you through some of the highlights because there's obviously a lot to go through, but these are the highlights. So I wanted to just start with when we work with our vendors that we have both in-state and out of state to help us with this messaging. We talked to them about how do we differentiate Wyoming from other states in this region. Obviously, we all share a lot of similar assets, but how do we differentiate Wyoming? What makes us stand out that people would want to come to Wyoming instead of a Montana or a Utah, Idaho? So our agency came back with this statement after some brainstorming sessions and said, really, we are the last bastion of the West, this eternal proving ground for the brave, independent spirit. And how do we take that and put that through all of our creative assets, our copy, all of our messaging to really set Wyoming apart. So that's what the statement and kind of the general value proposition that we use as we evolve our That's Why campaign to support the Wyoming brand. As for this particular season, we also decided to highlight modern explorers to try to tap into that whole independent spirit and coming out west to find yours. And so with that, I'll show you a little bit about where the Modern Explorers campaign was leveraged this summer. So for this spring summer campaign, you can see There's about a 700-mile radius around the state of Wyoming where we target a lot of our efforts. We are a drive market. We tend to get a visitation from around that radius. But then we also stretch this out nationally. There's some other highlighted markets that are in red, but this campaign, and those are heavy up markets where we might do some outdoor billboards, some additional targeting to some digital segments. But really, this is both a regional campaign and also a national level strategy. Some of the media on the next slide that I was talking about how expansive this has gotten over the years. We use everything from digital ads to search terms. When someone wants to type in, Wyoming, we actually pay into that so that they're fed the Wyoming Office of Tourism website or Wyoming businesses, so that those search terms are generating information for those travelers that are specific to Wyoming. We do audio and broadcast, but not in the traditional sense. A lot of this now is through connected TV and digital radio, not just tuning in your car. So these platforms go across a variety of different areas instead of just the traditional maybe radio, TV, and print that we did 20 years ago. And then the budget for this summer was about $4.2 million that we invested just in media. And that goes back to what Diane was speaking of we're going to have a foundational base of travel that will come to Wyoming, but we're really seeking that incremental travel that's going to drive that additional visitation and bring in those dollars to local economies. So this particular summer, we invested $4.2 million. For the fun stuff, some of the creative. Back to that statement about, that eternal proving ground and the independent spirit, we almost put this challenge out in some of our creative, like in this particular example of Buffalo Bill. He became Buffalo Bill, who will you be? So you want to come out and kind of explore these places, but also a sense of like connecting more with yourself and maybe some challenges that you would take on, whether that's climbing a mountain or maybe that's just learning more about how to interact with wildlife responsibly and driving, through some of our state and national parks. So there's additional examples of some of the digital creative. So these are throughout a variety of websites where you can see these online, talking about welcoming restless spirits. We try to tap in a little bit here also to maybe relocation or starting a business. We try to leverage some of the efforts that the Wyoming Business Council may be doing also to bring business here. So you'll see some of that overlap even in some of our work about entrepreneurs and Wyoming businesses and hospitality. So those are some digital banners. Of course, social, such an influence. We started out our social staff. We had a senior coordinator years ago that we would say, hey, you hire somebody young, why don't you help us, post on a few of these sites, keep us up to date. Well, that's, we've evolved beyond that. Now we have to have vendors that help us manage about 7 different channels. This is almost a completely full-time job on your strategy, both for organic, which means what we're typing up and posting, from our channels versus the paid side that our ad agency works into our campaign. So if you're on, Facebook and you see a Wyoming ad, that's very strategic that maybe we've targeted you as somebody who would want to come to Wyoming. Now, all of you are in Wyoming, so you may not see those because we're targeting a lot of out-of-state folks, but this goes across a variety of channels in our social efforts as well.
Oh,
yes.
And then
Yep.
we're going to have a change of how we'll be going from our presentation to what Steve's going to do, but not quite yet, Steve.
Yeah.
Michelle's going to set these up for you.
Yeah, I'll tee these up. So we also, this is, I mentioned, we do some digital broadcast and connected TV. So we put these videos together. I'm going to give you an example of one called The Restless Dreamer. It's supposed to be connecting, with folks about coming out, inviting you to the West to explore, again, whatever it is you want to explore, whether that's a high adventure, whether that's just some sort of softer adventure, maybe exploring our museums. It's just a variety of opportunities that you can have. It's just talking about getting out there and trying to find what it is that you connect with in our state. So this first video is used across a variety of, like I said, digital platforms. And then we also partner with, I guess, a variety of other entities where we can have our message go further than just on our channels. So this next one that you're going to see after that, because we're going to play them back to back, is with the Discovery Channel. And so not only do we get this content to utilize on our channels and platforms, But the Discovery Channel also plays this across all of their channels and platforms and connects with their audience, inviting them to come to Wyoming. And that particular video, this one is in the Kilpecker Sand Dunes, and it's a great one too. So that content was created by the Discovery Channel that we also utilize. This first video is created as the Restless Dreamer from our ad agency that we put out on channel. So with that, I'll cue the videos.
There were restless spirits, dreamers, outlaws. For the unspoiled, freedom from judgment. They came with new ideas, learn from ancient lore. They came with chips on their shoulders. In the West, they didn't just find a place. They discovered the truth, that the path of least resistance must be resisted. Your environment shapes who you are. Settling down is the most unsettling idea of all. The truth lies west. It's time to discover yours.
We want to go.
Good, and the marketing's working. Madam Chair, do you want me to pause for questions? Or
Any questions at this point, committee members? I don't see any. Let's keep going.
All right. Give me this moment. He has to wake back up.
I was just disappointed to not see Senator Schuler in that video boogieing through the sand dunes. Were you in there?
Her talent fee was way too high.
We're going kind of slow for
Did you want to do anything more on any of these about the
No, I
partners?
think, yeah, I just wanted to show, I had some examples here of also some of the digital ads that would pop up with this. And then, when people click on any of these digital ads, they would be taken to that video. So there's another partnership next, I think, with iHeartRadio. This is also, like I said, digital radio, which is across a variety of different sites, and you can access this content in a variety of ways when you're browsing around the website, or maybe you're also given this as a targeted audio piece to listen to on your social channels. We had an influencer that came into the state, and this is the nice thing about working with influencers. Not only do you get all of your content on their channels, but you also get their content. And so then we repurpose that and we put all of that content back on our channels. And so for an example, I think if you go to the next slide, because this influencer covered locations from Cody to Thermopolis, Riverton to Castle Gardens, camped at Sinks Canyon State Park, Pinedale, Fremont Lake. And so we get all of these great assets, and we call this user-generated content in our office, meaning we didn't create all of this. Usually we send Charles out with the camera, and he gets some great assets for us, both photography and video. But it's nice when you also get someone else's perspective that's just out doing this, that we can then use all of their assets to say, here's what they experienced, and here is Wyoming through their lens. So we get all of these assets and we share these with partners across the state so they can also benefit from these assets. We also partner with the Cowboy Channel. And this was great. This was a way, again, to lean into that cowboy culture, that original values proposition statement that I shared at the beginning. So our partnerships are very intentional. This one is obviously around to showcase our cowboy culture and some of our top rodeos. You can see that we had 20 different live interviews with various rodeo members around Carbon County, Park County, Visit Cheyenne, Sheridan Travel and Tourism. So there was a variety of interviews that are shared on the Cowboy Channel. And then we also, again, share these on our own channels as well. And then I just wanted to highlight, a beloved program that we've all supported for quite a few years now. How many years have we supported Team Wyoming?
Since 2005.
2005.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is another great way for us to highlight and partner with our Team Wyoming Cowboys. It certainly helps to elevate the Wyoming brand because they put a lot of information out on their own channels, their social channels, and their mainly, I guess, their social channels is where we focus efforts, but they also do news media interviews, and we ask them to obviously speak about Wyoming and all of those. So when they're talking about rodeoing and their experiences, they also talk about being from Wyoming and what a great place it is to visit. We also partner regionally with other states. This is a particular partnership we've now done for the last 3 years. So this was the 3rd year of partnering with South Dakota. We have a lot of data and research that indicates many travelers not only visit Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills in South Dakota, but then also come across into Wyoming and visit places in Wyoming, whether that's Devil's Tower in our northeast corner or even making the trip all the way across the state, to Yellowstone. And so we do a lot of promoting this Black Hills to Yellowstone route with South Dakota, and we start them, maybe in the Black Hills of South Dakota and in Yellowstone, and all those wonderful things you can do in between. There's a variety of pieces, paid digital, social, combined websites, where if you have an ad for this particular partnership, it takes you to a combined landing page that has information about both South Dakota and Wyoming. So it's another great partnership that we've continued because we've seen great results from that. Highway videos. So these were an idea with our 4 different routes that we, I mentioned that black to yellow one in the South Dakota partnership, but we also have kind of a park to park route, a Rockies to Tetons route, and a Salt to Stones, Salt Lake City, Yellowstone route. And these cover, it becomes inclusive with the entire state. So every community in Wyoming and every county, every small town, every state park is in one of these routes. And so it's a great way for us to kind of group content together and promote that region of the state. But we can do that across all 4 of these and make sure that all regions of Wyoming are covered in this content. And so these particular videos, we had 4 different routes. I do have an example of one of the routes that I will highlight with you next. We also collected a lot of photography assets from these, but we promote these again across a variety of different digital channels and on our own website as well for Travel Wyoming. So with that, I will hopefully queue up another video and you can see an example of one of the routes that we highlighted. But there are all 4 of the routes where we created video. I'm just showing you one. So again, those are on our website if you care to see all 4 of the different routes. That was just an example of a highlight of one of them. We also celebrated a big anniversary this year, the 150 years of inspiration of Yellowstone. So in this campaign, we actually partnered with Montana and Idaho to promote this 150 years of inspiration. We each invested about 150,000, and we asked artists from each state to create their own inspired vision of Yellowstone. I think you all received one of the posters from that campaign. There were 6 created, 2 from each state. We distributed those at welcome centers around the state. We had the artwork up on a shared landing page. We did some paid efforts behind those and really tried to show off what was very in line with the messaging that the Park Service and that Xanterra were trying to do with highlighting Native American heritage, working with a lot of regional tribes, and also highlighting artists and their visions of Yellowstone National Park. So in partnership really with the Park Service is where this idea came from. And then we did this as a tri-state partnership around some paid efforts. So very successful campaign. These were the 2 artists that were chosen from Wyoming and the work that that they did. I can tell you a little bit about Ben Roth. He chose to portray the Grand Prismatic Spring. He used a woodblock print medium. It was beautiful. And then Robert Martinez, a Northern Arapaho artist, he used a ledger art tradition where you use like pieces of paper, like old ledgers as a canvas, and he does that in a lot of his work. So these were beautiful pieces. They were, again, highlighted both through storytelling and video, a little bit of a background on them that we shared across channels, and then also the physical posters around welcome centers in the state of Wyoming. And I'm sorry, they were also distributed out of state in Montana and Idaho, because all 3 states shared all 6 of the artist content. And then, as we also know, what happened in Yellowstone this year, besides the 150th anniversary, were the flooding issues that developed in mid-June. In a case like this, you know, we immediately try to be extremely reactive. It's similar to COVID. We were having to be so reactive with COVID and shifting our campaign, and we did the same thing with Yellowstone. We immediately shifted that away from the park since the park was closed temporarily. When we were back up and running, it was a lot of things to do in the region because we didn't want to overwhelm the park, especially as they were looking at that alternative entry with license plates system. And then once that we were back to being wide open, we shifted again and said, you know, Yellowstone's wide open. So, you know, we're doing almost a different campaign on a weekly or daily basis to be very reactive and to help support that region of the state, to help support the park, and then also just to make sure that our visitors knew what to expect when they were coming to Yellowstone. So this was about a $250,000 investment for the months of July, August, and September. And we're continuing to try to make sure people know that Yellowstone was open and that they could come and experience the park.
If I may, Madam Chair, I just want to interject one thing here. It's so important to understand the ripple effect of Yellowstone visitation to all communities across Wyoming. You may know that I've heard of, or some of you may know more personally, the TA Ranch outside of Buffalo. So they work with a group travel planner, Tau Tours, and they rely on those coaches coming in and overnighting at the TA Ranch in Buffalo. So when Yellowstone was not available and Tau had suspended tours, that then affected overnight visitation for the TA Ranch all the way across the other side of the state in Johnson County. And so it was so important that we help bolster a consumer in their mind that this was still open. And we placed a lot of this positioning around news outlets so that where there were the videos of the houses floating down the river, that we were also there competing head to head with that messaging that here's another way to look at this. This did happen, but now the park is open and you can still visit Wyoming. And if you were planning a trip to Yellowstone, don't cancel, continue on with your planned vacation. Thanks, Michelle. Sorry about that.
No, the next slide talks a little bit about this recovery effort and how we did just that with the digital news releases and making sure that this one in particular had 31 different placements with 16.4 million people to really understand. We had lots of calls and they would say, is the entire state of Wyoming closed? You know, when we had the Yellowstone flooding, and it's just a matter of educating and saying, no, we have some closures obviously up in the northwest corner, but the state of Wyoming is open. So we have to really, like as Diane said, help educate folks because they're just seeing some of those devastating videos of the flooding, and they think that that's, you know, encompassing all of Wyoming flooded. So just helping to educate through things like digital news releases. Oh, and back to why responsibly, Madam Chair. So as Diane mentioned, much of what we try to do is not even just marketing, but it's a lot of educating. It's educating folks about the things to do in Wyoming that are not maybe just those iconic national parks. It's educating folks about how to interact with wildlife responsibly, how to leave these places very natural and preserved for future generations. And so we use Why Responsibly as a way to do that. We have a lot of information about know before you go. We ran into this post-COVID when everyone was getting back out and trying to visit the state, and then they would run into there was no lodging, maybe up in the northwest corner, because they didn't understand they had to book those ahead of time. So we wanted to try to make sure we're educating folks so they don't come out and have a poor experience in Wyoming because they can't find lodging or they don't know, you know, where to go or how to engage with our environments maybe in a sustainable way. And so this is both a paid campaign, so there's paid efforts behind this, but also education on our website. There's some great programs that like State Parks is doing. We just talked about their Pathfinder program yesterday, where they're also trying to get information out about how-to videos or podcasts and have ambassadors in the state that can answer questions. So if you're coming here and you want to ask a question to a local, they have resources for you. So it's finding programs like that that we can collaborate on and share those resources across channels, both like on State Parks website and a travel and tourism website. So Why Responsibly is that umbrella that we do most of that educational how to be a responsible traveler when you come to Wyoming. And then our public relations efforts, I'm really proud of this program. We, when Diane talked back in the strategic clarity document about share of voice, we don't do this obviously alone and just shouting on our own channels and through the paid media, but we also try to get a lot of media and journalists and freelance writers and influencers to cover Wyoming and share this information on their channels and through their publications. So these are just some examples of some highlights of earned coverage. And to date, we've had about 578 total placements, and these are not our paid placements. These are efforts that our team is working to get writers and journalists and other folks to do on our behalf. And there's about 578 of those to date, with an estimated circulation or impressions, meaning how many people saw those, of about 5.7 million people. And those are not paid placements, again, that we're investing dollars in. Those are just our efforts to try to get others to talk about Wyoming in a positive way. So really proud of that program as well. And I think with that, oh, I'm sorry, I have my content coverage map. We do this in our office every year. We put a map up in the downstairs, our collaboration room, and we pinpoint where all of our different efforts are taking place, whether that's bringing in, like I said, media that are coming in on familiarization tours to write about the state, developing itineraries that maybe James shares with domestic and international tour operators, our partnerships that I already mentioned in my presentation with iHeart, Cowboy Channel, Discovery, some of the production that our ad agency does. And we look at this to make sure, you know, where are we covering in the state? Do we have gaps? Do we have areas that we need to focus on? Because we want to make sure we have a visual way of identifying where our stories and where our content creation is being represented in the state of Wyoming. So I'm sharing this as a highlight with you. We actually have more, but it gets to be a very clustered map of dots, but I tried to highlight some so you can see that we really do obviously strive for statewide coverage and to represent the state in a way that is not just focusing on certain regions, but really what you can do in all areas of Wyoming when you come to visit. So I thought this was another just great resource to share today as a closing statement. And then Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm happy to answer any questions about some of our marketing highlights that I've shared with you today.
Thank you very much. Questions from committee members? Okay. Alrighty, we will, how about we frame it in the form of a question? So we start doing that. Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good job. I know that's not really a question, but good job. With that, I would like you guys, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you connect with me? Tugwater's done some really cool things and I got some updated stuff. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chairman and Representative Olson, there's some great storytelling from some business development there, as well as what they're doing to grow the tourism economy for Platte County. We're in touch with them. Yeah, no, but there's some good stories there.
Okay, any other questions? Alrighty, seeing none, let's move on to the next agenda item that we've got, which is
Madam
talking.
Chairman,
Oh,
we
Madam
still have a few more
Director
to go over
Schober.
here.
Oh, okay, I thought you were done. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you. And if I may introduce to you now, James Schoon, who's our Director of Global Partnerships. The other area that, aside from marketing and messaging, we have to work closely with the industry. You know, this is small businesses, independent businesses, local lodging tax boards, and we're much better when we're working together than we are on our own doing individual work. So with that, James is going to take you through our efforts that we're doing with our communities locally. And this is just, again, a brief highlight. We'll try to get through this rather quickly.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Madam
Welcome.
Chairman, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. Apparently, I'm the baby at this table. I've only been there for 17 years at the Office of Tourism. But when I talk to my constituents and new hires that we have, they always ask me what my favorite part of the job is. And it really is working with these communities, working with these partners. You had Director Westby up here today. We obviously work very closely with his team and Director Nesbitt. But it's been a pleasure working with them. We're going to highlight a couple of the partnerships and ways that we're working to support destinations across the state over the next few slides. There's a few up here, right, that will kind of lead us through a few co-ops, sales opportunities, and collaborations, but we can jump right to that next one if you want, Diane. One of the biggest pieces that Diane had mentioned earlier from our strategic clarity document is making sure that our partners have resources that they need in order to have strategic developments, making sure that they're visitor ready, making sure that they have strategic plans. One way that we go after this is working with a company called Young Strategies. And we've worked with them since early 2000. And they actually go into the communities, talk to the community leaders, talk to the local businesses, and they put together and help work out a plan for strategic plans for that area. We had the latest version of this in the last 3 years. We had 21 counties participate in it. And this is going to be an ongoing piece. We've talked to Young Strategies, and while he's there talking to these communities, everybody's really gung-ho on these strategic plans. When he leaves, it kind of drops off a little bit. So the goal is to continue with those plans, put blocks in place, put resources in place to move forward with that actual plan. Also on this slide, you'll see we actually did a great partnership with the University of Wyoming, the Hobbs School of Environment and Natural Resources. We had a few of the seniors doing their capstone projects. We had 12 of them go out to 14 communities, meet with some of the local leaders, as well as try to find some of the hidden gems, do some different product aggregation, and put those pieces together and give feedback to our office so we can use those through our platforms and promote them, but also work with the communities on ideas on moving forward. On the next one, they talked a little bit about the struggles that we've had during the pandemic. One of the biggest ones that was hit was working with the motor coach and preformed groups. Obviously, you couldn't have a certain number of people all clustered together in one vehicle, causing them to cancel a lot of their trips. During that time, when we couldn't actually have the tours here, our team did a great job of reaching out to those tour operators and tour planners to make sure that when things did get back online, that they knew where to go. This worked out great. Obviously, Wyoming's in a very strong position with some of the lodging around the state. Unfortunately, for the motor coach groups, that adds a challenge. When you have 40 people that are looking for a room, some of the hotels weren't able to host those 40 people, or they weren't able to accommodate that lower discounted rate that normally is offered to motor coach operators, which opens up a great opportunity, because with that, we were able to reroute some of those tours to include some of the lesser known parts of the state. So while some of the big guys will continue to do the main routes that they've done for the last 30 years, we have some new folks that are interested in learning more about the other parts of the state and staying in some of those small communities that can really use that economic boost. One motor coach per night usually averages about $4,000 in that economy. So it's very important to have that moving forward. As Michelle mentioned, the flooding this year actually hit the motor coach industry very hard as well. Because we do have strong relationships, we were able to contact those major players in the industry, make sure that they knew that the state wasn't closed, that the park wasn't closed, that there's still opportunities in the state. While we still did have a few cancellations of those coaches, we were able to reroute some of those folks and make sure that they still visited the state. An important part of working with this motor coach is that relationship. One way that we do that is through familiarization tours. And that's actually having those tour operators and tour producers come out and actually experience the product themselves in person. This year alone, we've already had 42 participants out this year. We are trying to take them to areas that they may not know or may not have worked with in the past. Amy on our team has actually taken them out to Southwest Wyoming, focused on the Lincoln Highway and the Bighorn Basin, just to name a couple of them. From those, they've already produced 7 new tours. And that's going to estimate out to about 750 new room nights in Wyoming, just from those family tours. So we're really excited about where the motor coach industry is heading. And it'll take us on into the international outreach. Again, with COVID, you're all familiar probably that the international borders closed. That caused a huge hitch in any of the marketing that we had going forward. We were at a great place before that happened. Through the pandemic, we made sure to keep those relationships through our in-market reps that we have, also working with Zoom calls and emails, just trying to keep the product on the shelves because we didn't want to lose those relationships that we've built up since the early 90s. There's still a huge push for the internationals to come back to the US. We're hoping that next summer is going to be it. They're really looking to get out of the major cities, go out to the wide open spaces. Obviously, that's going to be a huge push for Wyoming. With our partnerships, we realized that Canada and Mexico are projected to come back the quickest. So we're looking to do some media as well as some trade missions there with partners, probably from some of your communities, to go there and actually talk to some of the media and tour producers. So we're hoping to do some in Canada and Mexico over the next couple of years. We're also part of a consortium, a 5-state consortium, which is Wyoming, obviously, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho. We partner together and refer to ourselves as the Great American West in the European markets, as well as the Nordic region in Australia. That allows us to pay 1/5 of the cost to have in-market representation on a day-to-day basis. And that also allows us some marketing dollars to go forth with some marketing efforts in those countries as well. We also work with an organization called Brand USA, which is a destination marketing organization for the United States. So basically, Brand USA is to the United States what the Wyoming Office of Tourism is to Wyoming. So they represent the entire US. They offer us opportunities that we can buy into, such as co-ops and other multi-channel opportunities that we would not be able to afford on our own. So we're trying our best to collaborate with other entities to make sure that we keep our international costs, but still stay relevant on the international stage.
Mr. Schoon, I think
Yes.
I've got a question. Senator Salazar?
Madam Chairman.
Just a quick question. Obviously, we're all very proud of what we have to do with regard to the Home Tech Museum. And as you have seen, it's becoming quite a destination. Are you piggybacking on that? Tell me what your thoughts are.
Mr. Schoon?
Madam Chair, Senator Salazar, thank you very much. And I must say, the Military Museum is top notch. We've had 3 members of our team there. We actually produce a lot of marketing pieces that go out into the international market, such as newsletters, what's new sheets, itineraries that go out to tour operators, and as well on the domestic side that we'll put together itineraries. It has been listed multiple times. We've actually brought a couple of fans through to the museum as well. I think that that's going to be a crown jewel, something that's really a hidden gem that's up and coming that I think will really take off, that we're going to do our best to promote across all of our channels to the travel trade.
Any other questions? All righty, committee member, just as a acknowledgement, it's 10:38, so please continue.
So the next piece is actually going to talk a little bit about the interagency collaboration. Obviously, our main focus is working with the communities, but we also work with the agencies of Game and Fish, state parks, as well as the outdoor rec office. And this is just going to show you a couple pieces on our website. You just want to click through. So we have over 200 pages on our website that link directly to Game and Fish, state parks, as well as the Outfitters and Guides and the Outdoor Rec Office. Over the last 90 days, we've had 8,000 clicks that actually go directly to those pages. Obviously, on their pages, that leads to fishing licenses, the regs for hunting, as well as camp spaces for state parks and the other information from those folks. One piece that I will point out is that last one.
Let me go back to that.
No, keep going one more.
Okay, to the map.
Yep. One piece that I will point out, this is a big piece of our collaboration that we've done over the past couple of years. And this is going to be our Wonder Map. And the way that it's set up is that you can click on each of these pieces that you'll see up here, the icons, and it'll layer those out. So the one on the top right is the one that I always like to point out because it talks about camping. If you were to click on that, you can actually go through this process and actually book a reservation at one of the campgrounds. It makes it very easy if you're going out to try to find fishing locations, things like that. Trying to provide another resource for visitors as they come through the state. These next two slides are actually just going to highlight a couple of our co-op opportunities that we work with. This one actually talks a little bit about some of our paid efforts that we work with outside of our own channels. This is going to range anywhere from $450 to $20,000. Across these examples here, you're going to see a couple of our co-ops that we did through the fall and spring, which includes digital ads, social media posts, and online travel agent outreach. TripAdvisor is another one on here that you'll see, as well as a search engine marketing optimization. These 4 co-ops actually had 49 Wyoming partners participate in it. And because of this, they actually had 55 million impressions of what you see up here, as well as 600,000 direct clicks from these advertisings directly to their pages. The next one is actually going to be our own pages that involve our website, our social media page, as well as our Traveler's Journal. We actually had 70 partners with our Traveler's Journal this year. And we printed over 400,000 with a reach of 800,000 just from the Traveler's Journal. Next one. So as Diane mentioned earlier, we've really been exploring how we're tracking people as they cross the state of Wyoming, their travel patterns. One way that we're doing this is through geolocations and mobile devices. It's a little frightening to some people, but we are able to get a lot of research to find out not only how they travel the state, but we've also looked at some specific events. One of them that we've actually worked with was the 2021 Sheridan Rodeo. This was I'll let the video talk a little bit more about it, but it was really to show the local community on how distribution happens during the rodeo, as well as how that spend may play out.
So, Madam Chairman and members of the board, the video didn't transfer over in our technology, and it's a reason why I have. No, he didn't get it. So what we'll do is this will be live in a link that we send to you. But what you'll see is mobile data as it looks at the fairgrounds and Sheridan, then to downtown businesses. You can see it over the course of time. You can see where travelers are coming in and out of Sheridan during this time. What it also does is over a 3-day period. So it allows Sheridan Travel and Tourism, as well as the Wyoming Office of Tourism, an opportunity to look at that for travel patterns and where are their gaps, where are there opportunities to create more events to hold people longer. But it also is really important for a place like Gillette. If there's a gap, should we be creating something in Gillette and a neighboring community so that we can capitalize on those visitors? And it's fascinating data. We're using it more and more. We actually have been talking with our other agencies too about travel patterns and concentration of travelers and how we can disperse them through the state. So I'm disappointed that you don't get to see it today, but in the interest of time, probably a way to move us forward, and you'll have a chance to see it when we send you the link to the presentation. So, all right, and then there it's playing, but you wouldn't hear any of the sound, and I think without the explanation of sound, it would be difficult for you. So I will just conclude now with where we're going and how we're going to finish this up. So as we mentioned to you in the beginning, we've been operating on a general fund appropriation. We've been operating at around anywhere from $11 to $12 million annually, trying to compete, and I think doing a very good job against some of our competitors who have $18 to $35 million a year annual budgets. What James and Michelle have shared with you was what we were executing on through that general fund appropriation. Now's the opportunity to look at where we can go with additional revenues. And again, just a quick snapshot to remind all of you that in the 2020 budget session, House Enrolled Act was signed into law, which included a 5% statewide lodging tax, went into effect January 1st of 21. Of the 5%, 3% would be distributed to statewide tourism efforts, and 2% would be returned back to the county where it was located. So we're going to focus on the 3%. Of that 3% for statewide tourism efforts, 80% is to be deposited, I'm pulling it straight from the statutory language, is to be deposited into the Wyoming Tourism account. Funds are to be used for the Wyoming Tourism Board / Wyoming Office of Tourism. 20% is to be deposited into the Wyoming Tourism Reserve and Project account. Funds are to be used for tourism projects. So of the 80% of the 3% statewide lodging tax going into the Wyoming tourism account, this is what we are using for operations. We're excited because on the summer even winter campaign this year, we'll have a boost. And starting next summer with our summer campaign will be reflective of this increase of resources to put toward our marketing and destination development work. After we went through reductions because of COVID, our budget in the last biennium was reduced down to 23 million, which is, a little over, it's about 11.5 million, a little less than 11.5 million a year. And with this new appropriation in our spending authority, certainly we, right around 19 million. That's an additional investment of $14.8 million. That's a biennial number. So, when you break that down, it's a little less than 8 million. How that will be distributed, and this was in our budget request to the legislature, to the appropriations committee. You all voted on it in your process as you approved the budget, was to put 8.8 million into marketing and messaging. And that really, Michelle gave you a broad overview of the tactics that we're deploying. And that would be to bolster those, to really take those and elevate those efforts into a much larger scale and to be more competitive, as we said. 5 million would go into supporting visitor-ready communities. Much of the conversation that James had with you that we're doing in base level work right now would be to now move that and really move the meter on destination development and supporting our local communities. Leveraging technology. Almost every communication channel that we have is provided through technology. It's changing all the time. And this is to be up and ready with this. And then $712,000 was really to revitalize back our domestic and international trade. So that's going through wholesalers and tour operators and the package travel industry versus going direct to consumers. And so that was what we had presented to you, and that is what our intention is. Tourism marketing organizations they're called DMOs, destination marketing organizations. And traditionally, historically, that's what they've done, is really marketing, driving awareness and inspiration to travel to a certain area. But there has been an evolution that not only do we need to be able to do that, but we need to be very aware of what's happening in our periphery and how this is valuable to communities and how we support community efforts and take ownership of part of that community value. And so while we will retain the core of our initiatives of destination marketing of the whole versus the individual parts, that's part of what the state does. Individual communities will do the individual parts. We'll still remain deeply rooted in that endeavor. That will always be a part of the core of who we are and why we're in existence. But what you're seeing through this budget increase is now an elevation of how we're supporting destination stewardship of our iconic assets, but even in local communities that want that, and creating visitor-ready communities with more tools, more education, and more resources. Future plans for marketing the destination. We're in heavy planning phase. We started our planning phase for 23 in May and have been working diligently. We'll have more detailed plans for you as we start to move through the fall and the winter. But building on the base, we're going to be building awareness and consideration for Wyoming as a winter and a spring summer destination by casting a wider net. So we've got a strong strategy in place. We just need to reach more people. And by casting an international layer, we have a small international layer. It's limited. We can go broader. And that brings more eyeballs to the right people. We're not just for anybody. Wyoming's not just for anyone, to the right consumer who would enjoy this type of experience and who will embrace the why responsibly tenets of a vacation. To drive those intent to travel actions. We talked about that. What we need to do is really move people through that purchasing channel. And we want to make sure that we're enhancing that. Educate on sustainable travel. We'll be deepening those efforts. We'll be adding additional resources behind our PR and our social, and also deepening our storytelling, taking the stories of people in your communities or experiences in your own communities and letting our Wyomingites be our best ways to communicate the beauty of a vacation and what our lifestyle is. We'll continue with a fully integrated campaign to reach the right audience at the right place, the right time, and via the right channel with which they consume their media. That's very targeted. That's not just throwing something out there and to see what sticks. That's a very, very laser targeted, on purpose, intentional campaign. to seek out like-minded partners to extend the reach and the effectiveness. Who can help us raise this? And we don't have to do as much heavy lifting. How can we make this money go further? And then to leverage co-op opportunities, which James talked about, for our partners in state to take us to places where we can't go on our own. Now, we're still working with a lot of our traditional travel channels, Travel Zoo, Condé Nast Traveler, the Cowboy Channel, TripAdvisor, Expedia Group, but we're also in conversations with Ford about some opportunities where they're looking at their own explorers and their own change of a very historical, iconic brand and evolving into the marketplace today. We don't know where it will go. It's very early, but we've had some really productive conversations with them, and hopefully we'll have some really good feedback for you. But these are the ideas, and not only just ideas, they're progress and moving forward. These are actionable items and plans. Here's just a quick overview. Michelle shared some of this with what we did with 23, but we would be increasing just our paid media from 4.2 to 6.6. That's just in one element of what we're doing. And again, the same things that I had mentioned, going much more national with more integrated partnerships. Some of the stories that we've already begun for the Modern Explorer campaign, we'll have these rolled out. They're rough cuts right now. They're not ready to share prime time, but Tim Trites, Cowboy Distilling out of Pinedale, Jess Oldman and the Double D Ranch outside of Lander. They have a wild horse sanctuary, really deep and rich story there. Jimmy Chin, who is known as a climber, has done a lot of work out of Jackson, but we actually went on location with him in Lander and wanted to showcase some of the other places in Wyoming where he does a lot of his work. And then the Toman family down in Sweetwater County. And actually what we had started out was to use Mrs. Toman and really speak from her perspective and this vast knowledge, but it ended up being more done through the granddaughter's voice and what a legacy ranch in Wyoming means and what this Western lifestyle is and why it's so rich and so deep. So we will be excited to share some of these content stories, and there will be more to come in the Modern Explorer campaign. Moving our destination development forward, we have a lot of information, but there's a continued need to move forward. And there's national organizations who are leading the way. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We can follow those, but we are responsible for our own destiny. Wyoming communities need to have ownership, and they need to be able to tell their own stories, or it's not authentic and it won't resonate. It's not a one size fits all. What's important to Lusk, Wyoming is very different than what's important to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Technology provides us a wealth of information. I wish I could have shared the data and insights video, but you'll see it and you'll understand, I think, more deeply how we'll be able to use that. We now have the financial resources to be able to carry out these plans that we've wanted to do for some time. And then collaboration and working with others is always the key to success. You know, the heavy lifting is not so heavy when you're partnering. And we will continue to reframe the conversation around the visitor economy and working with local partners to make sure that the stewardship component is a big part of what we're doing as well. There's a program that we'll be using to support some of our destinations, and we broke our state up. I'm going to show you a couple of pieces here just quickly so you'll have a visual and you can have an understanding. But when you look at lodging tax collections and tourism related jobs, what we're trying to do is develop an understanding of local communities and their capacity to actually grow something. Teton County sits alone as Tier 1A. They're a very different animal compared to 22 other counties in Wyoming. So Tier 1 would be lodging tax collections of 1 to 5 million on a 3-year average and up to 5,000 tourism direct jobs. And you can see then in Tier 2, their lodging tax collections. Tier 3, less than 500,000, less than 900 jobs. This is a collection of what this might look like as we start to look at how our partners are, how they're performing, what they're doing on a geospatial basis. And so their tiers are here, their local lodging tax collections or their 3-year averages here. Have they completed YBETS? Were they in a capstone project? What is next to come? And so we're aggregating and amassing this so that we can have a very strategic effort to help communities that need it the most and support those who are already moving their way through strategic development. And so that we too can be very careful in how we're expending these public funds. You can see here Tier 1 just to support their destination development. In Tier 2, to build infrastructure. Those are really where the primary growth is in these local lodging tax boards. And then in tier 3, those are many of our communities where there's some great assets, but they don't have full-time staff. They have volunteers. The volunteer is the head of the chamber, is the county or the city treasurer, and also does garbage removal 1 day a week. We grew up in these towns. We know what this is like, and that's a burden. They may have the desire to grow tourism. They don't have the capacity to do it. And so we're trying to help identify what are those baby steps that we can take to then get to something else and then to something else. Rather than going from 0 to 100, let's be very strategic and incremental in our growth. Questions for this, and then I was quickly going to go through the project in reserve because I know it will affect the film incentive. I just have 2 slides on that one, Madam Chairman.
Questions, and then we'll get to that quickly, because I think we've been going for an hour. Questions from committee members?
Chairman, just one quick question. You mentioned on one of your slides about trying to build awareness for Wyoming as a winter destination. And obviously we love Wyoming in the summer and the fall. It's the best place to be. When I think of winter in Wyoming, we think of, skiing in Jackson, of course, our area. We go across the border to Utah, but and snowmobiling in a number of areas. But what I wondered is, have you done much in terms of marketing cross-country skiing? A lot of the towns have trails that they groom and that sort of thing. Have you done much in that area?
Madam Chairman, Senator Schuler, we have on all of our winter content there, we highlight all of the ski areas across the state: cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, snowmobiling, ice fishing, ice climbing. There's actually quite a few winter activities and winter events. And in our winter campaign, it isn't just about downhill skiing in the most well-renowned ski resort in the United States. It's about utilizing and raising awareness for Wyoming on a year-round basis. So we do have that content in our website. The film. So of the 3% statewide lodging tax, 20% is dedicated into the project and reserve account. Just wanted to remind you of the action that was taken during the session, the budget session. We had requested in our budget 3.75 million, 1.5 for renovations at Welcome Centers, 250 for the Worth Initiative at the University of Wyoming, and 2 million to go to that outdoor recreation office, which Director Rusby referenced earlier. That was approved through your process. The 2 million is just a mere amendment. That really is money that goes into Agency 024's budget. And we're working, I'll give you more updates on the Worth Initiative when we're further along in that. There was also in section 320 of the budget bill, a $2 million transfer out of this account into the Capitol Square Preservation account for exhibits wayfinding within the Capitol building and extension. And so that was an appropriation out of this fund of $5,750,000 that was approved by the legislative body in February of 22. Here's the collections and deposits of this particular account. Fiscal year 21 only had a half a year because it was starting January of that year. Collections or deposits into the account, 1.3 million. Fiscal year 22, a full 12 months, 6.1 million. FY 23, which is the month of July, the only information we have at this point, for total deposits of 8.1 million. The slide I just referenced was approved spending at $5,750,000. Senator Salazar, this is information that I had shared with you when you had requested a background on what had happened here. And so that leaves a balance as of today of $2,636,007 in the account. However, forecasted collections on a biennium are 10 to 12 million. And so we're 1 month into the biennium of 23-24. So through this biennium, it would be anticipated that there could be as much as a $10 million balance if there were no other appropriations spent out of it, or 12 million. So I just wanted to give you that context, Madam Chairman. As you went through this, I know there had been questions about this account and what was in it and what was being expended, and hopefully that gives you an overview. And I'm happy to answer questions about it as you go through the next conversation. Yeah. Thank you all so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. right, the next item on our agenda, we're gonna start working on the film center legislation. So here, overview, to address some issues about constitutionality questions at this time and ask, Alyssa.
You know, we're gonna
Present your work.
and then we'll come back.
Thank you, Madam Chair Ellis. This memorandum is about the constitutionality of potential film incentive legislation. This memorandum is very similar to the one that was presented to the committee last year. And so essentially there are three primary constitutional considerations that are outlined in this memo. The first is a requirement of a public purpose, and this relates more so to whether a program that appropriates public funds to incentivize private business, if that could potentially be prohibited or if there would be any concerns under the Wyoming Constitution. And so, as I mentioned, a requirement of a public purpose is essentially that the legislature cannot levy a tax or make an appropriation except only for public purposes. And this is true whether the Constitution so expressly provides this or not. That's Wyoming case law, kind of the basis of the requirement of a public purpose. And it is noted that the public purpose to be served must be more than incidental. And so while there is no absolute judicial definition of a public versus private purpose, there is some way to say basically that a public purpose, if it's apparent in the legislature's judgment, then that judgment should not be interfered with by the courts. And so it's likely that a public purpose may depend on the particular facts and circumstances of any case when considering legislation. And so for this program, a potential public purpose to be served could be, economic development for the state through film production, but also job creation, sales and use tax revenues, lodging tax revenues, et cetera. And there also is potential for second order effects, such as an increased profile for Wyoming, the film and television industry, the tourism industry, and the visitor economy. But it should be noted that simply spending for a public purpose does not mean the spending is constitutionally compliant. And so the second constitutional consideration outlined here is prohibitions against donations and appropriations for charitable or benevolent reasons. And this goes to Article 16, Section 6 of the Constitution, which first prohibits specific funding to individuals. And this is regarding loans of credit, the prohibition on donations. And the constitutional requirement is that neither the state nor any city, county, township, any political subdivision shall loan or give its credit or make donations to or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation, except for necessary support of the poor. And so then the second part of that, when it comes to prohibited appropriations, is when Article 3, Section 36 of the Wyoming Constitution, and that, is no appropriation shall be made for charitable, industrial, educational, or benevolent purposes to any person, corporation, what have you, that is not under the absolute control of the state. And so in the memo, there are outlined a few cases that I just will touch on briefly that just kind of might be viewed as an involved, reading of the Article 16, Section 6 portion. And they span from 1915 to into the 1950s. The Wyoming Supreme Court has kind of held that an appropriation of $2,000 to a county fair in 1915 was unlawful because the appropriation was unquestionably a donation by the county in aid of a corporation that was separate, that is a separate private entity. In 1923, though, an undersheriff was killed in the performance of his duties. And while the auditor initially refused to pay the amount appropriated for the officer's widow, the court found that it was not truly just a gift or a donation, that the legislator was not unwarranted in recognizing that death gave rise to a moral obligation and that it had a right to appropriate that money. In 1943, the court was confronted with a claim that the unemployment compensation system violated Article 16, Section 6. The court ultimately rejected the claim, holding that the legislator had the right to take into consideration the difficulties which may be encountered in an administration of that act. And finally, going back to the county fair in 1959, this time the appropriation was slightly different because it was given to a county fair board that was appointed by the county commissioners. The court ultimately determined that the county fair board, while being a separate entity from the county, still had authority to sue and be sued, and so was a separate municipal or quasi-municipal corporation and was acting as somewhat as a state agency. And so, so since the donation prohibition applied to private entities, the county fair board was a state agency that was found constitutionally compliant. And so finally, the third primary constitutional consideration is a requirement for adequate consideration. And of course, this is once again kind of implicating Article 16, Section 6. There was a case in 1977 that was in respect to the prohibition against the government loaning or giving its credit. That case involved the city of Cody joining into an agreement organizing the Wyoming Municipal Power Agency. And the agreement between the parties was to make up deficiencies created by a defaulting party. And this was attacked as an aspect of lending credit. And while the court noted that while participants agreed to make good on deficiencies, they also received a pro rata share of the system's entitlements. And so this neutralized the concept of giving or lending credit since something was received in return. So ultimately, the court held that the constitutional prohibition against municipality lending its credit to a private corporation has no application when there is an exchange of consideration. And so when considering whether there's an exchange of consideration, the lending of credit has no application. And while donation can be somewhat of a different, it does appear to be applicable to the donations clause, I apologize. And donation is not necessarily defined by the Constitution. It is considered a gift, but when considering adequate consideration, it's more so looking into what the actual consideration may be in a case-by-case basis. Consideration can take a variety of forms, including the performance of some act, forbearance, or the creation, modification, or destruction of a legal relationship. So to give an example, it's not considered adequate consideration if the promisee is performing a duty imposed by the law, if there is a payment of an already existing debt, if one party has already undertaken performance before a promise is made, may not be considered consideration, but it's kind of the reverse of those are also considered when you should essentially get to the question of what did you give to get what you got? And so whether a court would hold any potential film incentive legislation unconstitutional, I think would come down to a fact-specific inquiry and dependent upon the legislation itself. So I just wanted to address these constitutional concerns. And essentially get to the point that any such legislation should be drafted to serve a public purpose that ensures that the state receives adequate consideration in return for any monetary incentives being offered under the program. Without these components, it could be subject to challenge under the Wyoming Constitution. And then at the end of this memo, I provided just on 3 different states, just a little bit of information on the film incentive legislation from New Mexico, Montana, and Colorado. I wanted to note that in my research of these few other states, I did not find any constitutional challenge to a film incentive program really anywhere else in the country. But it is important to note that while other states operate under constitutional provisions and case law concerning donations of state funds and uniformity of taxation that may differ from what governs in Wyoming. So first, just very briefly, New Mexico provides an incentive for film production through the film and television tax credit. Theirs is a base amount of 25%. There are potential for additional uplifts to the tax credit amount to get you up to 35%. And it's operated through the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department in conjunction with their film department. And essentially, New Mexico's constitution prohibits donations to or in aid of any person, association, public or private corporations. But these provisions have been amended several times to provide exemptions. And so it wasn't that instructive. But then looking at Montana, they have recently passed in 2019, a new Economic Development Industry Advancement Act. It's the Media Act in 2019. It doesn't go into effect till January 2024, but it also provides an income tax credit. And it is somewhat different from the proposed Wyoming program because a production company must apply for certification through their Department of Commerce in the film office in order to receive the credit. And there has been no constitutional challenge that I found, but it should be noted that the Montana Constitution does require that taxes shall be levied by laws for general laws for public purposes. So again, similar to the consideration in Wyoming. And finally, in Colorado, they have more of a traditional rebate program. It is up to it's a base of 20% of a production company's qualified expenditures in the state. Colorado is somewhat different because they offer the state guaranteed loan program. And so the state may finance up to 20% of the entire production's budget if a qualified production is able to get qualified for that. They have several different requirements to be able to receive rebates and potentially also to qualify for the state guaranteed loan program. But when looking at the Colorado Constitution and how it works with their film incentive legislation, along with that loan guarantee program, once again, the Colorado Constitution requires that the state not pledge the credit or faith in any manner to any person, company, or corporation, and it prohibits any donation or grant of aid to anybody in a corporation or a company. And so while it's similar to Wyoming, these programs are still being operated in other states. And as I said there, I haven't found any other constitutional challenges.
Thank you.
But I'm interested
Questions?
for any questions?
Thank you, Luke. Questions for our LSO staff who prepared the memo? Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, so really appreciate it. Luke, can I take you to the page 5, right above category film incentive legislation from other states. The final paragraph there, Luke, you indicate that as long as the public purpose ensures that the state receives adequate consideration, can that, in your mind, be indirect? Or is it important that if we draft legislation like this, we have to have some cash returned to a given account that is the account that provided assistance to something? In other words, we hear from the state north of us that they have had something like an 18-to-1 return on that investment. That came through taxation, through sales and use tax, other forms. Can it be indirect?
Mr. Plum?
Yes, Madam Chair, Senator Landon. I think that certainly is a question that would have to be ultimately left to the courts. I think adequate consideration can take many, many forms. I guess from my understanding, I don't think it has to be absolutely explicit, considering other cases that we've looked at. But it should be something that can be, I think, readily identified and say this is the adequate consideration that we're receiving. I don't think it has to be, oh, we're definitely getting money back, but it has to be we are receiving this in return for our investment.
Further questions from LSO? Representative Jennings?
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Luke, in your studies of this, looking at sufficient exchange consideration, if we do this, if we say, okay, the return is high enough, have you looked at anything else that might pull in inadvertently? Other industries, for instance, that might come along and say, we're given enough consideration, we deserve this also. Have you looked through any of those?
Mr. Plum?
Madam Chair, Representative Jennings, I have not considered that or looked into if any other industry would seek for a similar rebate program or something, but this was mostly in terms of the film industry.
Follow up?
Well, not that they would, but could they? Could it make it available to various other entities?
I might just say, I think that's what this bill is seeking to do, is set up the parameters for how that would work. Without a regulatory framework that we would set up for some other industry, I don't think that they would create some additional right. That's just my take. But Mr. Plum, if you'd like to expand on that. Your thoughts.
Madam Chairman, Representative Jennings, certainly this does require the legislation, the bill. It does require that there are definitions for entities for what it qualifies as qualified expenditures and productions. I think how the bill is drafted is definitely in terms of the film production company, but I have not done a lot of research. I haven't considered the question of whether other types of industries could try and receive the benefits under this program, but the bill is definitely designed only towards, entities that are within the film industry and who can provide qualified, you can show that they have qualified expenditures. If that answers your question.
Further questions about the memo before we start talking about the legislation? Representative Sweeney? And committee members, I just say, I know we've got a lot of people who've signed up online. Looking at the audience, we've all received the emails. I'm curious to know how many people want to testify at some point once we get to the bill. So I just want to make sure we're giving those folks plenty of time. Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Luke, did you, in your research, take a look at our previous film incentive bill that we had quite a few years ago?
Mr. Plum?
Madam Chair, Representative Sweeney, I did briefly look at it. I didn't go into any depth reviewing it. I just read through it briefly, like I said, very quickly.
Mr. Sweeney, Representative Sweeney, follow up? Okay. Alrighty, committee members, thank you for your testimony, Luke, and for preparing this memo. Committee members, you have before you a draft bill 23 LSO 0015. It's titled the Wyoming Film Production Rebates Program. This isn't new territory for our committee. You'll recall that the prior session we had looked at similar bill, and it had made it into being introduced as a House bill. The House bill did an introductory vote on it. It passed the 30 vote threshold, which is normally what's required for something to advance, but because it was a budget session, it didn't pass the 2/3 introductory vote threshold. So out of, knowing that a lot of work has been done on this, we thought it would be prudent to look at the draft legislation again and continue the conversation. Mr. Plum, do you want to walk us through the bill? It does look a little different than what we discussed last year, and maybe just kind of walk us through some of the changes and the staff comments that you provided.
Madam Chair. So I think right up the top, so this is 23 LSO-0015. It is the Wyoming Film Production Rebates Program. This bill was originally called the Wyoming Film Production Incentives Program, but based on recommendation from the Wyoming Film Task Force, we've changed it to the Rebates Program. Just wanted to note that off the top. But this bill does, create and provide for the administration of the Wyoming Film Production Rebates Program. There are 5 new statutory sections. The first one does create the program. It's to be administered by the Wyoming Tourism Board. It provides the purpose for the program to support economic development and foster the use of Wyoming as a site for film production, bolster the visitor economy, and benefit Wyoming communities. The board can contract with entities who are making films in Wyoming to provide those entities with monetary rebates. It does limit it to the total appropriation available for the program, and the board is required to promulgate rules and regulations. The next section is definitions, including below the line, which are the expenses of a film or digital entertainment production that are professional, technical, or requiring manufacturing in the state. There are some exceptions to that. A board, of course, means the Wyoming Tourism Board. An entity means the person who is applying for monetary rebates under the program for a qualified production. And the program is this program. Qualified expenditures is an important definition, as it is the expenditures for goods purchased or leased or services purchased from a vendor or supplier who is located in and doing business in Wyoming. If the expenditure was made in Wyoming, it was made for the qualified production. And there are several further categories of this, such as rents for real property, cost for food, set construction, cost of supplies, materials, and equipment, and then local per diems, below the line salaries, and employment benefits for services rendered by the Wyoming residents. Here, there is a staff comment. It was based on a suggestion from the Film Industry Task Force, or at least I believe that they had mentioned potentially including a definition of above the line salaries. And so that may be one for the committee to consider whether that should be defined in so keeping with the policy of this bill draft. Further definitions include a qualified production, which does mean a film and digital entertainment totally or partially produced and filmed in this state that meets the criteria specified for a tier 1 or tier 2 rebate program. It does require that they have a widespread public appeal and encourage the use of the state as a site for film and digital video production and encourage people to visit Wyoming. And then finally, Wyoming resident just means any person who is domiciled in the state of Wyoming for not less than 90 days prior to their involvement in the production. And so getting into a little bit more of the actual rebate program is the next section. The program is split into 2 tiers. You can only receive a rebate under 1 tier. And in order to qualify for a rebate, there are these other additional requirements that a production must provide the board with a completed application and signed by someone from the entity who can certify the information is correct. Here was another comment that was raised, whether or not there should be further, I guess, clarification on what it means that the person who is authorized to bind the entity is certifying that any information is correct. Whether the committee has any thoughts on if there should be inclusion of a penalty under perjury or what have you related to the certification of the information. The next requirement is that the entity maintains accurate records and receipts for any qualified expenditures and the number of people that are hired, including keeping track of Wyoming residents and Wyoming veterans, as well as the number of Native Americans and Wyoming students who operate under who operate within this program. The next one is that the entity seeking rebates develops a preliminary qualified production distribution plan submitted with the application. I did need to note that I meant to include a staff comment and it didn't make it in this draft, but the Film Task Force did recommend deleting this section.
Can you repeat that? Which section?
I'm sorry. Yeah. So this would be under, it's on page 8. It is the subparagraph 3 beginning on line 18. And it is the one that requires them to provide a production distribution plan. And that goes along with some of the other recommendations from the task force related to views and whatnot. And so then the next requirement is that the entity remains in good standing with the Department of Workforce Services and in keeping with employment security and workers' compensation. And finally, that the qualified production includes the branded recognition of Wyoming in a form negotiated by the board. The board may by rule provide exceptions to this requirement. But so given those requirements, when you get into the next to what is subsection B, this is where we get into the first tier 1 rebate program. And this is a traditional media rebate program. It's a total rebate of no more than 30% of qualified expenditures and is only for full-length feature films, TV series, commercials, documentaries, VR products, and new media. Some requirements is that there's in conditions of this program is that there's a base rebate that is up to 15%. It does require that an entity spend $200,000 or more in qualified expenditures. And this is also where we get the requirement that they have to expect to receive at least 1 million views. When this production is released, the Film Industry Task Force does suggest deleting subdivision 2 in that staff note. It was mentioned to me that I meant to put subdivision 2, but it does just say 1. So it is the subdivision we're discussing, the not less than 1 million viewers.
Okay, did everybody catch that? All right, keep going.
Thank you. There are additional rebates that you can increase, from the base to get yourself up to 30%. It's a 5% rebate if 60% of the employees are Wyoming residents. There was a recommendation from the task force to make this an incremental rebate of 1 to 5%, kind of a step up based on each 10% of residents that are employed on the production. The next rebate is 5% if the majority of the post-production work is completed in Wyoming. That is somewhat of a change, but just depending on where that work would happen if more than that. And I think some of that could be prescribed by board rule. There's a 2.5% rebate if the production features Wyoming exposure, such as to businesses, clothing brands, national parks, museums, what have you. And then there's a 2.5% rebate if 10% of the crew are Wyoming veterans, Native Americans, or Wyoming students. Wyoming students are not required to be residents, But I think the point there is to just give them some space if they're at the University of Wyoming or whatever it be, that if they want to help on a production, they're still giving benefit to Wyoming. And again, here is another consideration for the committee about potentially changing this from a 2.5% rebate to an incremental rebate of 2 to 6% as you hire more veterans, Native Americans, or students. And certainly, I think their language within the bill still requires the maximum rebate you can get is 30%, but it would require, I think, a little reconfiguration of the numbers within the rebates and the additional uplifts that can be received. So that is the tier 1 program. The 2-tier rebate program is an alternative kind of setup, and it's a rebate of no more than 15% of qualified expenditures. And this is for, I think, smaller overall productions such as commercials, infomercials, some documentaries, short films, music videos, and things of that nature. Conditions here is that the base rebate on qualified expenditures provided for is just 10%. And an entity must spend at least $50,000 or more, and 60% of the production crew once again needs to be Wyoming residents. And similarly with the tier 1 program, there's a recommendation that this change to the incremental 1 to 5% rebate. And so, yeah, so the base is 10%. Again, there are additional rebates that can be received, including the 5% upon demonstrating the qualified production includes a Wyoming storyline or theme. I guess that is the one. In addition to the to a potential extra rebate within the number of Wyoming residents who work there. And so those are just the base 2 tiers of the rebate program. The next section, it provides for the application procedure and audit requirements. An entity that is seeking a rebate has to provide on a form prescribed by the board an application. And the information that has to be included is a copy of the script or a synopsis. They have to provide a comprehensive list of all qualified expenditures for the rebate tier that they're looking for. And this includes information such as the total dollar amount to be spent in Wyoming, total in-state and out-of-state below the line payroll numbers, the total number of your crew, including the number of Wyoming residents, veterans, Native Americans, and students, your average crew size per day for prep and shooting, but also for days that you will just be shooting, and a detailed list of all Wyoming film locations. You have to provide proof that provide proof from the workforce services that the entity is in good standing with that department, and a copy of the entity's most recent IRS form W-9 and any other information that would be required by the board. An entity cannot receive a rebate from the board unless the board specifically approves the entity's application, the qualified production is completed, and substantially all material contractual commitments made to the board have been fulfilled, and that the board completes audit of the entity's qualified to expenditures to ensure compliance with this act and the board's rules. And so once all that's completed, the final new section within this bill draft is that beginning in 2024, 2025, with that biannual budget, the board shall include a report on expenditures under this act for each of the preceding 2 fiscal years. The report should include an explanation of the benefits accrued for the state from the expenditure of the funds and for the rebates authorized. And so it should also be noted that an entity that obtains payment through this act in a fraudulent manner would be liable for reimbursement to the board up to 3 times the amount paid. And then they could also still face criminal penalty for those similar fraudulent claims that they're made. And then there is one conforming amendment in Wyoming Statute 912-1001. It just requires the board to administer the program as provided in this act. And then I would note that right now the appropriation is set at $3 million. Here, one moment. I want to make sure I'm saying the right one. This is in section 3 of the bill on page 19. I would know that I believe the Film Task Force may address the amount of that can be used, but the appropriation is from the Wyoming Tourism Reserve and Projects account, and specifically for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. And that's just in terms of the general reversion back to the Tourism Reserve and Projects account. There is a rulemaking section, and then there's a split effective date to allow for rulemaking to get this program going. And then the general effective date will be July 1st of 2023. I think with that, that covers the bill. I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Plum. Questions for LSO? Okay, with that, we'll start with public comment. We usually defer to our agency directors and staff that are here. So Director Schober, did you want to present to us? Thank you. We've got Charles Lammers from the Wyoming Department of Tourism. And then after that, we will move to public comment. Mr. Lammers, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. In your documents, you'll see there's an executive summary of the film production rebate. I just want to make a statement that we're in support of the film rebate task force's recommendations for this bill. And with that, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, questions for Mr. Lammers? Seeing none, thank you very much. Alrighty, so looking online, I believe we've got 3 individuals, or maybe just 2. 2, excuse me, 2 individuals who want to testify. So I have a sense who in the audience would like to testify in this bill. I've got Chris Brown. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll go to Chris and then the online presenters from there. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairwoman Ellis, Chairwoman Flintner, members of the committee, Chris Brown. For the past 11 years, I have testified in front of you on behalf of the Wyoming Lodging and Restaurant Association and the Wyoming Travel Industry Coalition. And I'm excited to announce to you today that over the last year and a half, we've worked hard to merge our 2 groups into one new association representing all of travel and tourism across Wyoming. And so Chris Brown, representing the Wyoming Hospitality and Travel Coalition. Appreciate the time this morning. I believe, Madam Chair, that I have testified in front of you all in favor of this bill at nearly every committee meeting for the last interim and this one as well. I won't reiterate my points other than our strong support for this bill and make myself available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to our online persons. We've got Sean Patrick Higgins and Robin and Kate Wiltshire. Let's go with Mr. Higgins first. And just so you're aware, it's 11:30. I know we've got people that need to travel back to Cheyenne and other places across the state. So, you know, if you've made comments to us before, please know we remember those, and we've been reading emails of from various folks about this bill. But we look forward to any testimony you've got, but please keep it somewhat brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Sean Patrick Higgins, legacy alumni.
We can't quite hear you.
Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
Can't hear you.
Apologies. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Higgins, we're still not hearing you. Let's try it one more time. 1 second.
Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much. I yield the rest.
Mr. Higgins, how about you hold on 1 second? Let's see if the Wiltshire group is able to testify and if we can hear them. Oh, that might be it. Let's try it again. How about Mr. Higgins? Let's hear you now. Here we go. Sorry about that.
Not to worry, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And members of the committee, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Thank you so much. My name is Sean Patrick Higgins. I'm the founder of Storyhouse Pictures, Inc., located in Sheridan, Wyoming. I'm a resident of Sheridan and a legacy alumni of the University of Wyoming. I've testified on behalf of this rebate program before. I sent along some aggregated data from our data scientists and research showing the return on investment for every dollar spent among our peer group yields about $19 in return. And I will make myself available for questions at this time.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Higgins? Seeing none, and thank you for your work with the other people in your industry to provide the following proposal for us to work with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Okay. Then let's hear from Robin and Kate Wiltshire.
turn on their video and audio.
Okay, if the Robin and Kate could turn on their video and unmute yourself, I think. We don't see you. I think we hear something.
Okay. Where, can you hear us?
Yes,
We're on
and we
location.
can see a beautiful sunny day. Yes, there you are.
This film is out of New York, and we're featuring.
We're having difficulty hearing you. It's a little windy, I think.
Come over here. Sorry.
We're currently filming a small production here on the ranch. This is a film crew behind us from New York City, and we're featuring my son. There's a second generation in the film industry. To make this competitive with other states, we really need to introduce this bill. And I really would like to thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? All righty, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony and participating with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, with that, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
The bill's been moved by Senator Guru. Any second? Seconded by Senator Landon. Let's see. How about we start just working the bill page by page? Let's start by looking at page 2. Any proposed amendments, committee members? Page 3. Page 4. Page 5.
Chairman, I'm just wondering if we want to include under the staff comments, the task force suggestion.
Yep. So, Madam Chair will, co-chair, how about we have that conversation? There is a staff comment as it relates to paragraph E. Do you have any preference on whether or not to, on how to address the staff comment?
Madam Chairman, I do not have a preference other than just to fairly straightforward to include the above the line salaries in subparagraph E based on the task force suggestion. And then I guess we need to consider whether it should be defined keeping with the policy, the bill draft.
Madam Chairman.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So in looking through the Montana kind of particulars, I don't know if we necessarily need to define it, but evidently that is lingo and language by the industry. And I didn't really understand it, being a little bit of a part of the working group. But after seeing it in Montana's regulations and also how that whole process comes together in Montana in that almost 80-page document that I looked through, I think it should be included. And I guess I would ask Luke through the chairman if it necessarily needs to be defined in statute, or it can just be taking place by if this passes forward by the board in rules.
Mr. Plum, do you have a thought?
Yes, Madam Chairman and Representative Sweeney. I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. Below the line is currently defined in statute in this bill. So I think if you want to go with above the line, it may be appropriate to go that way, but I think it could be defined by board rule. I think it just would be the committee's preference if you think since there it is already defining below the line, if we would also want to define it in statute. But similarly, I do think it could be left to the board's determination. And I don't know if they have an opinion on that.
Okay, Director Schober, did you have an opinion on this? I don't know. Committee members, I'll tell you my preference. I think, we have a definition of what below the line is. So I think presumably anything that doesn't count as that could be considered above the line, maybe. I certainly don't think we need to entertain it on the fly and try and come up with a definition or a conceptual amendment. I think if we think we need this to be further defined in this bill at a later point in time, once it's introduced, we can look at an amendment, but I don't think it's make or break for our consideration and moving it forward to today. So that's just my thought. Alrighty, so we'll not worry about that on page 5. Anything else on page 5? Page 6, we have another staff comment. How about we do Senator Schuler first? Sorry, Bill.
Chairman, question on this. I looked at the industry task force, their suggestion there. And at first I thought maybe we really should delete those subparagraph A and B because I just think they're very subjective. I think they're very hard to measure, but I don't want to mess with the possibility of that change having an impact on the public purpose. So I don't know what to do, whether to make a motion to delete those. I guess I could, but maybe I'll defer to Senator Landon.
Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, I'm thinking alike with the senator. I think we could be a scalpel instead of an axe, maybe. My suggestion would be to amend line 2 in paragraph A and strike the words "have widespread public appeal" and then eliminate paragraph B. So A would read, would encourage the use of the state as a site for film, et cetera. And then B would be stricken. I don't know how you would quantify how something would encourage somebody to visit our state. I think that's implied, and I'm sure the board will consider that throughout any project. So that's my amendment.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment, or it's been moved and seconded by Guru. Any comments? All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The amendment's passed. We're still on page 6. Any other amendments on page 6? Moving on to page 7. Moving on to page 8, we have another staff comment. In addressing the staff comment, I think that is something that the agency can do by rule. There are a couple of different methods, like who's the registered agent for the entity. We have other guidelines that we look at in other areas of statute of who's certified to speak for an entity. So I think that could be addressed by rule. That's just my personal preference, unless anyone wants to offer an amendment to otherwise. On page 8, I think there was also another discussion about lines 18 through 19. Or excuse me, 18 through 22. This was the requirement about a distribution plan. And I believe the request, there was some discussion about deleting this requirement. Representative Sweeney.
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion to delete the lines 18 through 22, that entire section. My memory serves me correctly, the discussion was not necessarily the toughness, but what we're really saying here in the industry doesn't make a lot of sense to the industry, and how that can be absolutely quantified, I guess. But that would be my amendment.
Okay, it's been moved to delete those lines, lines 18 through 22 on page 8. Is there a second to that motion? Second. And I'll just take this moment to say that is my recollection was I think that there might have been a time when this production distribution plan made some sense when you had traditional forms of media. Who were you pitching it to? But with the world of streaming and availability of content to be widely disseminated, I think the discussion was that this might be a little outdated thinking to have this required plan. So I would certainly support that deletion. Any other comments about this proposed amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Representative Sweeney's motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. That amendment's passed. Any other amendments on page 8? Page 9? Page 10? Representative Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Line 10 through 14, I would propose a motion to delete that section. Also, again, the relevance in, as Madam Chairman just talked about, again, the ability to substantiate these numbers is, I don't know if it's possible.
I'd second that motion. Any discussion on the proposed motion, which would be on page 10, lines 10 through 14 to delete that paragraph? Senator Landon and then Senator Knapp, or Representative Knapp.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I was thinking about these two provisions that we just talked about. I'm certain that the board is going to cover all of that. If there's a production proposal in front of them, one of the things they're going to spend quite a bit of time on is to say, why are you producing this? How are you going to produce it? And what are you going to do with it? So honestly, I don't think we have to be that prescriptive in statute for this to already be taking place. So I support a removal of that, I think.
Okay, Representative Knapp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support leaving it in. I think it goes back to consideration. I'm still looking for the consideration that we're receiving in exchange for these quote unquote rebates. So if we're not reaching a target audience and a specific amount of people, then I'm not sure what our consideration is.
Further comments on this proposed amendment? Committee, I think I would encourage you to vote for it simply because we just deleted on page 8, lines 18 through 22, the requirement of a distribution plan. And then here we are referencing that they have to have a distribution plan. So I think it's a consistent, it's consistent with the last vote we just took. And on the consideration piece, I don't view the consideration of being, that these productions necessarily expose Wyoming. To me, it's more nuts and bolts. How many jobs did it create and how many positions and what kind of real dollars are flowing? So I think I'm more comfortable with that more concrete data rather than just views and exposures for what we might consider to be consideration. So any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of Representative Sweeney's motion to delete lines 10 through 14 on page 10, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. The amendment's passed. On to page 11. We have another staff comment. Committee members, I just want to thank you. I know we're working through this and asking all of you to put your thinking caps on. So just know I appreciate that. There is another staff comment. Maybe a question for LSO. If a committee member were to entertain the language suggested or the concept suggested by the task force to do an incremental percentage rebate, would that simply require an amendment, a proposed amendment on page 11, line 8 that says an incremental percentage rebate ranging between 1% to 5% upon demonstrating? If we were to add language like that, I just want to make sure then we'd be giving the Department of Tourism flexibility through rulemaking to hash out how those increments would work. I want your feedback if you think that that's how that could be, if someone were interested in proposing that amendment.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think one thing to consider is, yeah, so as it says right now, a 5% rebate upon demonstrating the total number of Wyoming residents is not less than 60% of the total number of employees. I think to give some flexibility, I guess, and I believe I'm correct in thinking that it was, let's change it from 5%, a 5% total rebate if at least 60%. I think it was an incremental rebate depending on the number of people number of Wyoming residents who actually are employed. And in the staff comment, I kind of included some rough language in there that it would be, demonstrating each 10% of the total number of people employed. So I would just say, I think it would kind of depend on how the committee would like to go forward with it, to say something of the nature, a 1 to 5% rebate upon demonstrating the total number of Wyoming residents. And I don't know if the committee would like to say it's a 10% per 1% of the rebate, or to just try and make it more general, a 1 to 5% rebate upon demonstrating the total number of Wyoming residents employed for the entity's qualified production. I think there's a couple ways to do that. Just depends on if you'd like to try and give that more to the agency to prescribe by rule, if that makes sense.
Yes, so, LSO provided possible language that would be more prescriptive. We could certainly take a less prescriptive approach and just say incremental and let Department of Tourism establish that by rule. But I think there's some merit to this idea, and I'm curious for anyone who has some feedback.
And
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Would it be possible to ask Charles what his recollection working? He's worked directly with the task force.
Thank you. Mr. Lammers, would you like to comment on our discussion?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, just refer to you the executive summary under tier 2, Wyoming crew 1 to 5%, 10% increments, as well as tier 1 to 5% and 10% increments. The reason behind this is because initially it might be challenging to have a crew of 60% Wyoming residents. So having that flexibility would be beneficial.
Okay. Representative Sweeney.
So as a follow-up to that, in tracking that would give the flexibility here in the LSO's type of language. What needs added, in your opinion, to make that work? That language is down on lines 25 through 28.
Mr. Lammers.
Yes, and Madam Chair, Representative Sweeney, I'll just kind of refer back to what John Brody was doing initially on that. Does that answer your question? Or sorry, and what was suggested?
Okay. Comments from committee members? Do we want to tackle this in amendment, an incremental? Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, I would make that a motion, but was wondering if you'd be comfortable with LSO as a conceptual amendment and have them draft the language we talked about. I'm struggling with coming up with the wording here on the fly, but I would move a conceptual amendment to reflect what the staff comment said.
Okay.
I'd second
It's
that.
been moved and seconded. Committee members, do you know what you're voting on here with this amendment? Madam Co-Chair?
Well, the staff suggestion is a bit more prescriptive versus language that would just be an incremental rebate upon demonstration that total number of residents, and allowing the board to make that definition. So I guess I would be more in favor of a less prescriptive language. And I believe that the staff suggestion is a bit more prescriptive. So I guess I just need clarity then, Senator Landon, on your amendment.
Madam Chairman, I agree with that. I think that's what's reflected in the executive summary that was provided to us. So maybe our staff could utilize what was given there. Again, it's difficult to come up with the language here on the fly, but I think if it reflected what was presented right here, I think I'd be really comfortable with that.
Okay, and maybe Senator Landon, let's take a look at that language on page 11, lines 25 through 28. Maybe we say a 1% to 5% rebate and then strike some of that language and said based on the total number of people employed for the entity's qualified production or Wyoming residents. Based on as a more conceptual, but that's what we're getting after. Would that be a friendly offering to your amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's been moved by Senator Landon. I can't recall if we had a second. Second by Sweeney. So everybody understand what we're voting on? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Landon's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The amendment's passed. Any other amendments on page 11? Moving on to page 12, any proposed amendments?
Woman Ellis, I'm sorry, may I ask, just on that last one,
Mhm.
is it specific, was there specific language you sought to have there, or is it still remaining in the conceptual area to keep it less prescriptive, but just say it's a 1 to 5% rebate?
So, Mr. Plum, I said, how about we'll use based on as a placeholder, so it would be a 1% to 5% rebate based on the total number of people employed for the entity's qualified production or Wyoming residents, something to that effect. So if you need to fine tune that or wordsmith that a little bit, but that's what passed.
I just want to double check on that. Thank you very
With
much.
that, thank you. Page 12, any amendments? Page 13. Here we don't have another staff comment. That will affect paragraph 4. I'm trying to find it. Oh, page 12. Yep, there we go. This is the paragraph that is talking about additional rebate that's trying to incentivize and recognize when a production is using veterans of the armed forces of the United States, Native Americans, or Wyoming students. The suggestion is to offer an incremental rebate of 2 to 6%. So I'm curious to know if anyone wants to offer that amendment conceptually. And maybe how we did in the last amendment, leaving it up to the department through rulemaking to develop how those increments would work. Senator Guru. It's been moved. Is there a second? Second by Senator Schuler. Luke, do you have enough information to work with on this amendment as well?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask one quick question. So it is a 2.5% rebate upon demonstrating that not less than 10% of the qualified productions crew were veterans, et cetera. Is the intention to leave the 10% in this one, or would you like to remove that language and say it's a 2 to 6% incremental rebate, essentially based on the number of, kind of keep it more general, less prescriptive as we discussed with the last incremental rebate?
Correct. Giving them, the Department of Tourism, more flexibility, but the top end is 6%, not 10. Okay, any discussion on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No.
The amendment's passed. Okay, we're on to page 13. Any amendments for page 13? Page 14. We have another staff comment here. This might be a simple fix for anyone who wants to bring the amendment to make it conform to what we did on page 11, an incremental.
So I'd make that motion.
Moved by Banks, seconded by Landon. All those in favor of amending page 14, line 6 through 7 to provide for an incremental rebate from 1 to 5%, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The amendment's passed. Any other amendments on page 14? Page 15, we're on the application and audit requirements. Page 16. Page 17. Vice Chair Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to revisit 2 to 6%. My concern is we had that in at 2.5%. My concern is that if somebody qualifies for each and every one of these rebates, does that put them over the 30%? Because we've changed the 2.5% to a sliding scale from 2 to 6%.
Director Schober.
Good, Madam Chairman.
question.
Representative Newsom, if you will look at that summary sheet, when there's a table of the tier 1 and tier 2 side by side, the base level incentive is what they could get. They cannot go any more than 30% on tier 1, regardless of how that uses it. They can't use all 3 of the other options because that would put them over. And so they can only qualify within 1 or 2 of those options. On tier 2, it's the same thing. There's an opportunity to go higher than the 15%, but through rules, we wouldn't allow them to stack up to go more than that. So the max would always be 30% on tier 1 and 15% on tier 2. There's just other ways you could reach that. The purpose is to expand those opportunities a little bit, and most of it's done through workforce.
Okay, further questions? Thank you. Okay, we are back on page 16, 17. Any changes for page 17? Page 18? Page 19? Senator Guru?
Madam Chair, on page 19, lines 7, 8, and 9. It says right now, the Wyoming Business Council under Wyoming Economic Development Act. I think that is old language and needs to be changed to Wyoming Tourism Board.
Okay, Luke, you might take a look at this. I think I understand the proposed amendment, but the sentence starts with the board shall be responsible for implementing the tourism program and functions, including the expenditure. I'm just trying to think of where I don't think we need to amend it to say tourism board twice.
Right.
So maybe take a look and do you see what we're saying?
Absolutely, I do understand, and I don't know off of the top of my head, Madam Chairman. And I can definitely look into it and make sure that is correct.
Okay, so Senator Gru, maybe a conceptual amendment that says something like the board shall be responsible for implementing the tourism program and functions, including the expenditures of all appropriated for the tourism program.
That's
Something along
exactly
those
the
lines.
language I just struck.
Okay, so maybe we'll just do that. Senator Gru, if it,
That's fine.
yeah, I think, so then the amendment is page 19, line 7, starting with the word assigned, delete the rest of the balance, all of line 8, and then on line 9, the word act and the comma, or maybe leave the comma in there. That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Motion by Guru, seconded by Flitner. Any discussion? All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The amendment's passed. Any other amendments on page 19? Page 20?
Madam Chairman,
Oh, Representative Sweeney, I'm sorry.
so page 19, line 17, section 3, there was a discussion with the working group on is $3 million for a biennium going to move the needle up against, say, Montana. So my amendment would be to move this from, the amendment would be in the appropriate language, moving that to 10 million, which could be discussed.
Already, the motion is to change it from 3 million to 10 million. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Banks. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question for Director Schober. If there's enough in that fund, you gave us those numbers, and how would that play if there would be enough in the fund to make that kind of an increase?
Director Schober.
Madam Chairman and Representative Newsom, so as of July 1st of 22, the balance in that reserve is 2,300,000. I don't have the exact number right in front of me. It's projected to generate through this biennium through by June of 24, that there would be roughly $10 million in the reserve account. But that would be providing, I guess if you did make this appropriation and it went through the legislative session, there would be probably no money left in there to do any other projects with it. And so out of that reserve account. And that really is that legislative discretion as to what you want to do with that account. So I would leave it up to you to decide where, if you wanted to appropriate a total amount that would be in there, or if then based on what would be collected through this biennium, or if you would make a decision to say we want to use a different amount so that there would be some other funds to be used for other projects, but that would be it to you.
Okay. Thank you, Director Schober. Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Guru?
Just a question, if this gets enacted in this way and we appropriated $3 million, I'm gonna look over at Senator Landon for this one, as an old hand on appropriations. Would that just be a biennialized number and go from 3 million to 6 anyway?
Senator Landon, our old hand.
Veteran hand, I'm sorry.
Madam Chairman, I would think that this figure is a biennial figure. Anytime we put an appropriation in and we go into a budget process, we assume it's a biennial figure. But maybe we do need to specify that. I don't know, Senator, that. But I think it's a biennial.
Okay. Senator Guru, did you have an additional comment? Okay.
No. And Madam Chair, just
Senator
a
Landon?
quick additional comment. This is a consideration for our committee to suggest that we put this money in an account. If we don't get any calls, that money's going to stay in there. You know, the tourism board may or may not utilize all those funds in a given period of time. So this is a one-time, appropriation that we're going to put in this account. So.
Okay. Further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of Representative Sweeney's motion to increase the amount from 3 million to 10 million, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No.
The amendment's failed. We're on page 19. Any other proposed amendments? Page 20. Okay. No, okay. We're back on the bill. Any comments before we do a roll call vote? Representative Knapp?
Madam Chair. And this is just my comment of thinking through this whole bill. I understand we are doing it on the fly. I understand time is imperative, but this bill has come before the House one other time in a different form, under a different name, and failed introduction. And I haven't been a legislature for long, but I've been in government for a long time, and we're using terms that I don't understand. I understand the term grant. That's easy. I understand the term tax exemption or tax rebate or contract for services. I understand. Those are terms we use in government when we have something to be done for a purpose for the public, and we get consideration for that purpose. We're using the term rebate, and rebate would insinuate that we've been paid something already. We're rebating private businesses' expenses is what we're doing with this bill. And the reason I bring this up is because of the constitutionality of this. I'm okay with bringing a bill forward that does tax exemption for the industry. We can vote on that. We do that for other industries, but I can't think of one other industry or one other businesses that the state reimburses expenses for a company in exchange for jobs. And that's why I asked the question of consideration. I understand consideration for advertising, I understand consideration for bringing people to the state of Wyoming and being able to measure that as consideration. But again, I don't know of any other business or corporation that receives this from the state where we reimburse their expenses of doing business in exchange for the jobs they create. That's my comment.
Okay, further discussion on the bill? Question? All those, how about we just do a roll call vote?
Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Landon,
Aye.
Senator Salazar,
No.
Senator Shula.
Aye.
Representative Banks,
Aye.
Representative Haroldson,
No.
Representative Jennings, Representative Knapp,
No.
Representative Newsom. Aye. Representative Sweeney,
Aye.
Representative Williams,
No.
Representative Winter,
No.
Co-Chairman Flitner,
Aye.
Chairman Ellis.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Okay, that bill will see the light of day one more time. Alrighty, committee members, good work today. We, I think, I don't think we need a recap unless you want to, committee or LSO, of directives. I think we're pretty clear on the bills that will be introduced for the next meeting. We will be meeting in Cheyenne on October 24th and 25th. Please be there. I'm going to visit with my co-chair and make sure that we have a wonderful, wonderful 2 days filled with learning and good work. I do see, Luke, did you have something you wanted to say? No?
Madam Chairwoman, I don't think I have any additional comments. I think, yeah, I tried to take good notes. I think I understand where all the bills that are currently, just, yeah, if there were any other directives as of right now.
Okay, and then committee members, any other comments for the good of the order? Senator Guru?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say thank you to our friends here in Hot Springs County for hosting us, the tourism board and the hospitality folks for the party last night. But just great time here. Nice being able to get out in Hot Springs County and take advantage of all the great opportunities there are here for tourism, and know that you folks are really setting a mark. It's really nice. It's great to be here. It's just a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay, anybody, anything else? I think it was Director Westby who, said how much he loved his job. I gotta say, it's so fun being on TRW, best committee in the legislature. So we get to look at all these fun issues. So thank you, everybody. We will see you October 24th and 25th in Cheyenne. Have a safe trip.
Thank you.